Thank you. Welcome to the April Commission meeting. As is customary, let's say the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, let me read this instructions first. To those watching via Zoom, if you do not send an advance comment sheet prior to the start of the meeting, but would still like to comment on an agenda item, please do one of the following. If you are on Zoom via your computer, you can send a chat to the host with your name and the agenda item you wish to comment on. If you are listening on the phone, you can send an email to wgfvideo@wyo.gov, making sure to include your name, phone number you're calling from, and the agenda item you wish to comment on. Thank you. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce two new commission members and welcome them to the commission. First off, we have Ashley Lundvall from Powell, and she's representing District 5. Welcome. Secondly, we have Mark Jolovich from Torrington, Wyoming, and he's representing District 1.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Okay, first item up for consideration, number 1, is the election of officers. The chair will open the floor for nominations for commission president.
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate yourself to serve as our commission president for this next year.
Your second?
I would like to second that.
Been moved by Commissioner Brokaw, seconded by Commissioner Ludwig to nominate myself, Peter Doobie, as the commission president. Is there any more nominations? Any more nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for putting your confidence in me. It's quite a privilege and an honor, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. We'll now open the floor for election of the vice president, nomination of vice president.
Mr. President, I would like to nominate Commissioner Galen Bird for the position of Vice President.
Is there a second?
I'd second that.
Commissioner Ludwig nominated Commissioner Bird as vice president. Commissioner Brokaw seconded it. Any more nominations? More nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations. Okay, next up, we'd like to, Chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the January commission meeting.
I would move to accept the minutes of the last meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Byrd moved and Commissioner Ludwig seconded to approve the commission meetings from the January meeting. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. Director Nesbitt.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, members of the commission. Congratulations, Vice President Byrd. Congratulations again, Mr. President, and welcome to our two new commissioners. We're really looking forward to it. Absolute pleasure so far to get to know you better, and we're looking forward to 6 more years.
Thank you.
So, Mr. President, I've got a few things here today. First of all, I thought I would just give the commission an update on a topic I know we provided you some information on over the past month and a half or so with regards to the discovery of zebra mussels in our state. Give you a little update of where we've come, where we're at now, and what the path forward looks like. So when we initially became aware that this product called a moss ball that's sold in pet stores could potentially have been imported to many pet stores across the country, we immediately went out and looked, and sure enough, we found these products as well as viable mussels in tanks in pet stores across Wyoming. There were several. I think we started off with 4 spread across the state, and there's a handful more now where we've discovered these things. We immediately started a messaging campaign literally within hours, and quickly got the word out in multiple different forums to folks about the problem, about what the potential threats would be, and what to do in order to get rid of these things if people had them. The threat is that these zebra mussels they're very prolific, They can survive in many different environments. They're native to the Caspian Sea, maybe other places as well, but I know the Caspian Sea is where they're native and south of the Ukraine. And when they're here, they're not good. We've never had zebra or quagga mussels in our state. We've worked very, very hard for over a decade now to keep them out. We've invested a lot of money in it. We've got a whole crew of folks that come in and do an exceptional job all summer long, and now we have folks that are working on it year-round to make sure that we don't have these mussels introduced into our state. Interesting thing is that we always believed the vector would be a boat, potentially a water truck, but really a boat is what we were most concerned with. We have a lot of boats that come to our state, as you're well aware, from Lake Powell, which is infested. And so that's been the focus of our efforts. Never did we really imagine that they would show up in a pet store, in an aquarium, and a thing called a decorative moss ball. So we had to look at things a little bit different, and we had to look at new ways to try to educate a completely different public than the boating public or the hunting and fishing public, because lots of different folks have aquariums. So the threat is that because they're so prolific, if somebody, the thought would be if somebody dumps their aquarium down a toilet or a sink, that they could be introduced into a municipal water system that way, end up in a water treatment plant. If they weren't killed in the water treatment plant, could be put back into live water in the discharge from a water treatment plant. Certainly probably the most direct threat would be somebody taking a fish tank out and dumping it in live water somewhere. And then, once they're in the water system, there's never been a way that anybody's found where you can eradicate them or get rid of them. So the governor put together what he called the Zebra Mussel Response Team. He asked Director Miyamoto from the Department of Ag and myself to lead that team. And we quickly brought them together and started. We really focused on 5 key lines of effort, I guess you will. And first of all, let me grab some. Did want to mention, along with Director Miyamoto and I, we had the Director of the Office of Homeland Security, we had the Director of State Parks, DEQ, Water Development Commission, State Engineer, Wyoming Energy Authority, Office of Tourism, and WYDOT, all on this group. And we identified 5 lines of effort, or 5 objectives for our work. First of all, to eliminate the source. And we did that rather quickly. We worked with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and learned where these things were coming from. Essentially, we found that 90% of these moss balls that were coming into the country were coming in through 2 points of importation in California, and then identified a couple others on the East Coast. Fish and Wildlife Service worked fairly quickly to notify the folks that were importing them to stop any more importation, and we pretty quickly eliminated that source of importation. Additionally, the Director of the Department of Ag issued an embargo, basically prohibiting any introduction of these moss balls into the state, and also prohibited their sale. So that was the number one objective, was eliminate the source. Secondly, we began an investigation. It's a criminal violation to bring these things into the state, and so we began that within the state, and also assisted the Fish and Wildlife Service in their investigation at a national level. Very quickly, these mussels were discovered in over 30 different states in the country. For some states, it was a big concern, like us, and other states it was not, because they've been dealing with the catastrophic impacts of zebra and quagga mussels for quite some time. The third objective we set was to find and assess what the potential impacts in our state could be. There's a lot of different water infrastructure. As you well know, almost everything that we do in some way, shape, or form is tied to water. So there's agricultural water systems, obviously, that could be affected. They could clog up any kind of delivery system, hydroelectric power. If these things were to find themselves into a hydroelectric power plant, they could cause a lot of problems. Obviously, when they're in reservoirs, they can create problems for recreational boaters, for people that have docks, for people who use beaches. These things, when they die and wash up on the shore, they make it so that you can't walk barefooted down the shoreline, because they're so sharp they'll cut your feet up. Certainly for us, a biological impact. because, they prey on the bottom layer of the food chain, and they remove nutrients from the water that the rest of the food chain, the natural native food chain, relies upon. So if you remove that source, everything else is affected, including fish, including other aquatic invertebrates. It's, the entire system can be affected by these things. And there's no known effective predator of quagga or zebra mussels. So that was the next step, is to look at what could happen and make sure we had on the table every single thing that could be a potential impact in Wyoming. And then we talked about methods to, if we do discover it in a system, any kind of water system, how we would either contain it or eradicate it. I told you that we've never developed any kind of a method to eradicate it in live water or in a natural water system like a reservoir. However, we wondered if there were ways in more of a contained water system, if you could eliminate it there. Example, in a water treatment plant, could you use UV light or other chemicals to kill it or eradicate it in that system? So we looked at those things. We, fortunately, the department, the commission has been forward looking on this for quite some time. And a couple years ago, we began rapid response plans that we would use if we ever had zebra or quagga mussels show up in our state. And so we were able to use some of the techniques in those plans to identify what we would do if these things showed up in live water. And while it's not really within our purview or within our direct responsibility, we provided a lot of help to those other agencies that had responsibility for municipal water, because we know that at the end of the day, if we can't deal with these things while they're in that system, that if they are in the effluent and they end up in live water, it's going to be our problem eventually. So we worked hard with the other agencies to help them with that, beyond just our scope within live water. And then the fifth objective was along this entire process and continuing today to communicate and communicate and communicate. And I can't say enough about the job our folks have done to get the message out and to think really creatively. I mean, they're involved right now in a competition or a raffle where if you'll bring moss balls into one of our offices, you get entered into a raffle. I think the amount of the raffle is up to, I think, $1,300 now. They're giving me the thumbs up. $1,300 cash that was provided by partners as a reward for people to bring these things in. A lot of messaging through every venue you can imagine to get the word out. So where are we at now? We're in a spot now where we think we kind of got a handle on a plan, but we got to go out and look, and we got to start looking to see if we can find this stuff, to see if it's already made it into any of our systems. We have not detected it, but we haven't done a lot of looking yet. We just developed the capacity within our wildlife lab to do the tests more efficiently and cheaper. We're looking, Chief Osterlin and his crew are looking right now at some, they call them eDNA portable detectors, where you could take water samples and run them through this machine and very quickly determine if the mussels are present, or mainly it's not the mussel, the adult mussel, it's the juvenile larval version, which is called a veliger. And so we've been looking at those and looking at places where we're going to test water. Since we began our AIS program in the state 11, 12 years ago, we've always had a plan each summer, and we've tested a lot of water around the state to see if they've made it here and we didn't know it. And so we'll continue to do that, but it typically doesn't happen until later in the summer when the water warms up and we have a better ability to have more effective tests. So we'll be doing that. Again, we're assisting water treatment facilities with testing. We identified the top 10 most important treatment facilities to look at, and then a tiered list of all the other treatment plants in the state, where we'll go and we'll give those a look. And we're kind of in this monitoring phase now. If we find it, we've got some plans about how we're going to go and attack it. Obviously, if it's in a reservoir or a live body of water, we'll implement our rapid response plans. If we don't have one for that particular body of water, we'll use another one as a template for a body of water that is closely, has some of the same characteristics and use the same techniques. The DEQ and others have been looking at what they can do with UV light and other treatments at the water treatment plants. And so, you know, more to follow. We're going to keep watching. I will tell you that it's kind of a gloomy picture when you think about the effect these things could have on our state. The one thing that I think is a little bit more optimistic is we don't really know if they can effectively reproduce and survive in Wyoming because we've never had them. So we can have some glimmer of hope that maybe because of something in our ecosystem, they're not, you know, they can't do well here. There have been places where they've been discovered and then never reproduced. I think that's what they believe the case is up in a reservoir in Montana. So anyway, that's where this thing's at. We're wrapping up our work with this group. We are going to put everything into a pretty good report of all the work that was done over this response, and that will be available here. It's probably going to take us a couple months to get that all put together. I did want to just call out, I've talked a little bit about some of the folks that were involved in this response, but Josh Leonard, who's our AIS program coordinator in the fish division, just did phenomenal work. He really stepped up to the plate and worked his butt off, and was just very responsive. He knows this stuff inside and out, and did an excellent job, as did the other folks in the fisheries division. You know, it was all hands on deck. Everybody jumped in and did really good work. I'm dang proud of them. Our comms team, same thing. They all just dropped what they were doing and put all their focus into this, and it was effective. Also, our wildlife investigative unit, they did the same thing. They got out with AIS inspectors and they went in and they started investigating and trying to find these things in pet shops all over the state, and then collecting samples and getting the products off the shelves to make sure that, you know, we couldn't make the problem any worse. So with that, that's an update on where we're at with the zebra mussel stuff. Before I move on, is there any other or any questions that any of you might have?
Good.
So just wanted to remind folks, we've typically for the commission, the new commissioners' benefit, we've had an outdoor expo, game and fish expo for a lot of years. We had a little break where we didn't do it for a couple of years, but we started it up again here about 2 years ago. Last year we weren't able to conduct it because of COVID restrictions. We have to, because there's so much planning that goes into it, we had to make a decision several months ago on whether we would do it this May. At that time, based on what we knew about COVID and what restrictions were in place, we opted to move to a virtual option. And actually that's been quite, the comms crew's done a good job of looking at how to deliver that product in a virtual environment, and the response has been great. We got a lot of teachers all over the state that are interested, that are receiving. We're actually reaching more people than we would have by having everybody come to Casper to the expo. So wanted to let you know it's just not out there in front as much, but it's going on, and I think it's going on as effectively as we can without having people in person where they can put their hands on things. A couple things on the new administration. So we have been working with, to the best of our abilities with folks that are in place. They haven't appointed a lot of the agency directors, the political appointments for agency directors yet. So we're kind of waiting to see who's going to go where. We have started to have some discussions with the new administration to see how, certain policies from the last are going to be affected. One of the things you may have heard of is this concept in the new administration called 30 by 30. Their plan there is and their goal is to protect 30% of the country, have 30% of the lands in the country protected by 2030. There's some money associated with it. There's a lot of things that are not defined yet. There's a lot of process and a lot of, the how that we're not aware of. We have been engaging though through the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies and through our contacts in the administration as well as through our congressional delegation to learn more about that, and so we can comment appropriately. OFWA has put together a letter that I've reviewed, and I think lays out state concerns fairly well that they intend to send to the new administration, and we'll see how that goes. You know, there was recently, you've all probably seen the suspension on oil and gas leasing that that began with an executive order when the new administration came in. From a wildlife perspective, we certainly had some concerns. One of those being how it would affect existing policy that we have with regards to migration corridors and the sage-grouse executive order. You know, the sage-grouse corridor policy that's been in place now for over 15 years focuses on the protection of habitat within the core, and it focuses on having development outside of those areas, regardless of the land status. Additionally, the migration corridor strategy that we've looked at now is taking and encouraging development to occur outside of migration corridors, or at least the surface disturbance associated with that, again, regardless of land status. And frankly, decreasing all of the options that are on the table is a concern, because those two policies specifically have been something that has been effective to protect the most critical and valuable wildlife habitat. And the other thing that is certainly concerning is that if federal lands are not a part of the options to cite surface disturbance, you know, the focus becomes on private land. Some of our most valuable habitats in the state are on private land. And so, you know, right now it's a suspension. And there's a review that's taking place. We hope that, you know, they're going to consider some of these things as they look forward. And we've articulated our concerns to this point. With that, I think I'm done, Mr. President. I would be glad to answer any questions anybody may have.
Any questions for Director Nesbitt? Thank you very much. Very busy. New Commissioner orientation. Mr. Kennedy.
We know all this. Yeah. Okay.
So while we're getting that up there, Mr. President, members of the Commission, and Director Nesbitt, good to see you all here. Congratulations to the new commissioners, and congratulations to Vice President. So just a little background here on new commissioner orientation. There's usually two really big items that the new commissioners are faced with their very first meeting. One is the budget, and that's a huge issue. There's nothing that's much more important than your budget, and we spend an awful lot of time on the budget. And then it seems like we're dealing with damage claims. So in the past, for new commissioner orientation, we've spent as much as 2 to 2.5 days just on presenting new information or information for the new commissioners on department programs. And we actually found that after the first day, new commissioners are overwhelmed with information. In fact, all the commissioners are overwhelmed with information, and that really doesn't do us very good to prepare you for those two important items. So last year we had a retreat, and we found that, and we have a retreat scheduled for this June. We found that that retreat was extremely productive, where we could get away and talk with agency leadership and the commission for a couple of days and really dive into programs. And so that's what we're doing. We've scaled back our new commissioner orientation to just 90 minutes that you see today. And then in June, and you'll all see soon after this meeting, we're putting together an agenda right now. We'll seek your input on that agenda for the retreat, but we'll take a deep dive into each program, into each division at the commissioner retreat, and spend some really good time just talking about the work units, the priorities that we have, more into our budget, really anything that the commission wants to talk to us about. So today, what we did is tried to be a little bit strategic and provide to you, to prepare you a little bit more for the budget, an overview of the department, just how we're structured. It's very informal. Director Nesbitt and Deputy Director Bruce are going to jump in and help me with this. We got a PowerPoint to run through with you. And then Jenny's going to spend some time talking to you about some of the legal aspects of what it means to be a commission and some things that you'll need to know as being a commissioner. And then Deputy Chief Edberg's going to go over some on damage claims. And tomorrow you'll be dealing with both budget and damage claims. And at this meeting, we're going to add to this list of important items, and you're going to go over all the season setting at this commission meeting. So this is going to be an interesting couple of days. So I think one thing that I learned was having a field trip like we had yesterday. That was pretty cool because you got to see every program that we have, both in terms of Cheyenne headquarters with division administration. Our entire leadership team was there. And then you got to see every division at the regional level. The folks on the ground that get the great work done for the commission and the department. So that was pretty neat. And I'll say for the budget, and I'll bring this up tomorrow when we talk about the budget, you saw a whole bunch of different elements of the standard budget yesterday when we went to, and we'll talk about the standard budget tomorrow, but you got to see what our Habitat and Access branch needs to have in the budget for some of the equipment in our feed ground program and what Wildlife Division needs in their feed and hay budget. And so that just was really productive, I thought, and I hope you all agree that was productive yesterday. All right, so okay, Wayne, I can't do it. I am the techie in the director's office. Let me just start there, okay? Delayed. Okay. Nope, go ahead. So as I was saying, whenever the director has any questions on anything that's really high tech, he comes to me, and then I get him straightened out. Okay, so generally speaking, I think you all get our general organization that we have, and Director Nesbitt has the challenging job of reporting to the governor and the commission. So we are, of course, an executive branch agency reporting to the governor. We have two deputy directors. Angie's our internal, and I'm the external operations. And what that means, there's a lot of overlap between the two positions. What, Mr. President?
You just kind of had that flip-flop, but that's all right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say I'm
Screen
external?
is wrong.
I'm not
I thought you
external.
were just doing that to make sure we were paying attention.
Yes, that's exactly right. So I handle the internal operations of the agency, and Deputy Director,
Very well.
Deputy Director Bruce handles the external operations. There is a lot of overlap actually between the two, and so Director Nesbitt and Angie and I, whatever it is we're working on, we make decisions together. And in fact, we normally involve our entire leadership team in a lot of the decision making that takes place in the director's office. You see underneath Deputy Director Bruce and I, we have our human resources program, our policy and planning. That's primarily two positions in the director's office, one being Todd Larson, fairly new employee. Todd, raise your hand. And Megan back there, Megan Lockwood, is in a policy and planning position, and she helps Sheridan all the time up in the director's office. And of course, you've seen she's been very critical in trying to get the virtual aspects of our commission meetings going for us. So we appreciate that. Our communications and outreach program, Brian talked a lot about that on the zebra mussel issue. They do a great job just communicating everything that's important to the commission and the department. We have Rebecca Fitzgerald here, who is the supervisor of the communications and outreach program. Sarah Dorenzo is our public information officer, and you'll see her a lot at the commission meetings and elsewhere. Jenny Staven, who you've already met, and you'll hear from her in just a little bit in our legal services. and our habitat protection program. I'm going to let Angie talk a little bit about that. That's one of the functions in that external deputy director that Angie supervises is our habitat protection program. And you'll hear a lot about this program at commission meetings as well. But if Angie, if you want to explain a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks. I'll jump in here real quick, commissioners. So really the goal of the habitat protection program is exactly what it says, to protect the habitat, those crucial and important habitats that our fish and wildlife need to survive here in Wyoming. And how we do that is we spend a lot of time working with our federal land management agencies in their NEPA process. So their National Environmental Policy Act. When they're developing those plans, we are a seat at the table to express the wildlife concerns that we want them to address. Some examples are the Rock Springs Resource Management Plan that's been going on for quite some time now. One that recently got finished would be the Converse County EIS, Oil and Gas Development. So we're really involved in those federal land management plans. Another thing we do is we take requests from state agencies, county and local governments to do fish and wildlife reviews. So they are reaching out to us wanting a review for all sorts of different things within their county. And then thirdly, we work really hard to implement the Governor's Gordon's executive orders, the Sage Grouse Executive Order and the Migration Corridor Executive Order. And at the end of the day, we work with developers. That includes everything from solar and wind energy, mining extraction, oil and gas developers throughout the state. We work with the federal agencies, county and local governments, all for the goal of not limiting that development, but really working to minimize the impact to the fish and wildlife.
Then you see underneath both the deputy directors and the director, we have our main divisions. Our fiscal division and our division administration consists of Division Chief Greg Phipps, and you've met him, I think yesterday for the new commissioners. A lot of times at the meetings, you'll see our CFO, Meredith Wood, and she couldn't make this commission meeting. Tomorrow, you'll meet Melissa Rayner, who will present the budget to you. And so you'll meet them tomorrow. Our services division, Division Chief Eric Wiltanger, and he is here, and you've met him. I think you had a chance to meet everybody yesterday. Chief Osterland makes up our fish division administration along with Dirk Miller. Dirk is the deputy chief of fish, and he is here now as well. And our wildlife division with Chief King and Deputy Chiefs Brimmeyer and Deputy Chief Edberg, and you'll hear from him in just a little bit on damage claims. So that makes up the kind of the organization, and stop me anytime that you want. I'll go into the number of positions and things like that. Just real quickly, I will mention, so in the director's office, we have 28 full-time positions. Many of those are in the communications branch. Fiscal has 47 full-time positions. Fish has 89 full-time positions. The services division has 53 full-time positions, and the wildlife division is the largest division with about 167 full-time positions. So when you go into statute and look at what the commission's responsibilities are, very broadly, it is to provide an adequate and flexible system for the control, propagation, management, regulation, and protection of all wildlife. And I emphasize all wildlife, not just game and fish that are caught or hunted, all wildlife species in the state, including all non-game species, of course. So it's a very broad statutory mission that's set out for the commission. And we'll be going a lot more into the weeds on Chapter 23 and commission responsibilities starting today with the AG's office. We talked about this at the field trip yesterday. The commission has a lot of assets and properties out there. You have nearly 500,000 acres that we manage for the commission. Not all of those are deeded acres. Of that, about 180,000 is deeded, owned by the commission. The rest is lands that are associated with your deeded lands BLM, Bureau of Reclamation, Office of State Lands and Investments, but they're managed as a wildlife habitat management area by the commission. You learned that there's 22 state feed grounds. We have 3 fish rearing stations and 7 fish hatcheries throughout the state, 2 bird farms. And many of these, as we travel around to commission meetings, we'll go and visit these areas. And you'll be able to see all the great work that's being done out in these areas. We have 2 labs. We have a game and fish lab that's actually in our services division. That's a wildlife forensics and fish pathology lab in Laramie. And we have a state vet lab where we have office space at the state vet lab in Laramie as well. We have a wildlife research center at Seville on Highway 34 and between Laramie and Wheatland. I encourage you to get out and see some of those areas as you're traveling around the state. And the commission owns a lot of houses. We have 50 plus houses in our wildlife division, same in fish at all the fish hatcheries and rearing stations. So when you look at the budget, we look at the budget tomorrow, keep that in mind that that standard budget that you'll look at tomorrow goes into all of these feed grounds, all of these rearing stations and fish hatcheries and houses. We have a fairly large deferred maintenance budget every year, of course, to keep up on commission assets and houses and buildings, and it can be pretty extensive. In Cheyenne, our Cheyenne headquarters, about 110 employees we currently have that are based out of Cheyenne at HQ. All the rest of our employees are spread out in our regional offices. I think that, I know that the current commissioners have been reaching out to the regions really great, and I think the new commissioners have as well. But we encourage you to get with the regional supervisors in those regions where your districts are and get to know them a little better. I think you know that we have a regional office. You've visited the one here in Jackson, one in Cody, Sheridan, Green River, Laramie, Lander, Casper, and Pinedale. We're at about 384. All those division positions that I mentioned earlier add up to 384. That's full-time employees. Now we have a cap that's been set by the legislature and the governor's office that's at about 400 positions. So we can fill some positions that we have vacant. And right now, though, we're at about 384. This does not include all of our contract positions and temporary positions, which are cyclic, but extensive. We have a lot of contract and temp employees out there, and we'll be talking to you a lot about the projects and why we have those contract employees. But as far as our full-time employees, we do have a cap. We can't just add positions to that cap. The director's office, as I mentioned, is made up of our administration. So we have the legal services with Jenny and others from the AG's office, our policy and planning, human resources that I mentioned. We have 3 positions in our human resources division that takes care of all of our personnel issues, our leadership development program, our supervisor training, and also a payroll position that works closely with the fiscal division. So three FTEs take care of all that work for our very large agency. I mentioned our communications and outreach program and the habitat protection program. Our fiscal division is broken into 3 areas. And again, I already mentioned this, but Chief Phipps will be going into a deep dive into his division during the retreat. So this is just a large, big picture overview. They have their administration, the licensing section, of course, and the general accounting section. And I'm not going to go any deeper than that, but if you have questions, just stop us and I can have our division administrators come up and answer any questions that you may have. Our fish division, in addition to the administrative functions they provide, they are separated into an aquatic habitat, a fisheries management, and a fish culture section. And again, as a reminder, that's 89 full-time positions in that division. Our services, I want to go back to services division. Talked a lot about a couple of these specific programs yesterday during the field trip. In addition to their administrative functions with Chief Woldhanger, they have the lands program. You're going to hear a lot from the lands program at each commission meeting. I believe you've all met Sean Bibby. I think he's here, right there, supervises our lands program. Also in the services division is our geographic information system, preparing all the maps that we use in every division to get our jobs done better. Our information technology program, our habitat and access branch. Ray Bradyhoff, I believe, is here. You might wave Ray for the benefit of the new commissioners. Our conservation engineering, we have an engineering program, and that sometimes surprises new commissioners. And what they do is they're working on all those facilities that I mentioned and overseeing projects like the Cody building. And they will start working on housing in Jackson, and they shepherd all the big projects, both restoration and capital construction projects for the agency. And because of limited staff in that program, we will be contracting out a lot of those services too. So in the budget, you'll see areas tomorrow, for example, where we're contracting out a lot of engineering just because we can't do a lot of it in-house. And I mentioned the Wildlife Forensics and Fish Health Lab already, and that's also in our services division. Again, that's about 53 full-time positions. Our wildlife division, largest division in the agency, in addition to administration, I mentioned the bird farms, the Elk Feed Grounds. They have a science and research program, non-game bird and mammal program, statewide habitat and migration, our veterinary services, our large carnivore program, general wildlife management, our statewide law enforcement work units, our regional information and education folks, and Mark Goki is here. I think you probably met him yesterday. He's the regional information and education specialist here in Jackson, works very closely with Rebecca's communications team to help provide the communications and outreach at each of the regional levels. And a regional wildlife program. 167, I think Rick is at right now in the wildlife division for full-time positions. And again, we'll go into more detail on all those programs a little bit tomorrow during the budget, but more at the workshop, at the retreat. So we have a strategic plan. I wanted to give that to you, and I forgot a little bit earlier, so I'll get that to you today for those that don't have a copy of it. A few years ago, Director Nesvik led us through a pretty intense process and has ever since then, and been very committed to providing direction to all of us that we're going to follow a strategic plan, which is good, because before the development of this document, Forging the Future, we did not have a true visioning strategic plan for the agency. We had what we call the strategic plan that was really a financial reporting document that was very important, and we needed it, but it didn't nail down very concisely what it is the commission and the department are going to work on in the next 3 to 5 years. And so we've developed that. And again, I'll hand that plan out to you here in just a minute. It's broken into 2 main elements of our mission statement: conserving wildlife and serving people. So on the conserving wildlife side, we've got 3 main goals that deal with our general fish and wildlife management and law enforcement. Habitat, of course, is one of our highest priorities. Invasive species, both terrestrial and aquatic invasive species. Those are 3 program areas or goals that we've established for the next 3 to 5 years that we're going to try to tie our budget to every year, and we're going to try to commit our resources to those goals. On the other side of our mission of serving people, we've got 3 primary goals there as well that deal with general communications, outreach, and education. We have a goal here for the public and public use and providing high quality resources for the public to use. That includes public use of your WHMAs and other areas and hunting and fishing access. And then third, we have a goal that's focused internally, where we're looking into our employees and looking at investing in employees and professional growth with the leadership development program and efforts to deal with workloads and things like that. And future funding, of course, will remain a high priority of the department. So I wanted to conclude, and then I'll see if Brian or Angie have anything to add. Some important resources, and I've gone over these with the commissioners, but just to, as you start looking at some things to prioritize your time with, I think that that strategic plan is good for you to get knowledgeable and familiar with. Not only to know where we're focusing our effort in the next 3 to 5 years, but we're also going to be seeking your input when we go to update that strategic plan. In statute, Title 23 is critical, and you will become very familiar with 23. Commission regulations, and you're going to start hearing a lot of regulations tomorrow. In every commission meeting, you'll be dealing with some regulations in some form or another. You have a policy manual that we follow. It will not come up with you very often, but if we internally need to update a policy or the commission has a question about what the department is using for a policy on a certain matter, we'll bring that to you. But they're commission adopted policies that we use to guide our operations in the department. And so that document is available, and for the new commissioners, I'll be sure to go over that with you, at least those important parts of the policy with you in the next 2 to 3 months. I put down game and fish meetings and projects here because we have found through the years that there's nothing more valuable than you getting out on the ground, not just for you, but for our employees. And so we encourage you to get out and get onto projects with our regions. And if you talk with these commissioners that have been on the commission for a while, I think they would agree with me that those are very valuable. There's also, in addition to getting out on the ground and doing some really cool projects, you're learning about what our agency is doing. You're learning about our employees and how committed they are. In addition to that, they have a lot of meetings that I think would be of value to the commission as well. They have regional meetings that are focused on specific wildlife and fish issues. And they also have general regional meetings where they bring in all the work units that may be important or valuable for you to attend. With that, do you want to add anything?
I'll just have one quick note. One other resource that I think you guys are well aware of would be the department's website. It is in the process of getting updated. So I think one of the problems is there's so much information there, sometimes it's hard to find. So reach out to us, but I know a lot of you already use it regularly, and I'm sure you guys have looked at it as well. So.
We go into Jenny. Okay. All right, Jenny's going to go over some of the an overview of some of the more important legal aspects, and then I think she'll probably help Scott go into some damage claim issues as well. And again, please stop us when you have questions.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jenny Staben. I am your Attorney General representative, and I'm in the Department of Natural Resources Division. To start off my talk today, I just want to give you a brief overview of what the Attorney General's office does. The Attorney General office and overall represents all legal interests of the state. They conduct criminal prosecutions, defend and file any kind of legal actions on behalf of the state or state agencies. Our office also serves as legal advisor to the governor, state agencies, elected appointed officers, and mainly looking for, we assist in a variety of different legal issues and assisting agencies with their statutory compliance or when questions come up, that sort of thing. Specifically, I am a part of the Natural Resources Division. The majority of our division handles the federal caseload and the federal litigation, which typically involves NEPA, Endangered Species Act, and the APA. I personally am your legal advisor. I am fortunate in a way to be the only member within the Natural Resources Division. I have one client, and that's the Game and Fish Department and you as a commission. And in that, part of the reason for that is because the legal work involved and the legal demands of the department and commission, they're so broad, you're involved in so many day-to-day issues that you have one attorney assigned to you, which for me personally is a fantastic job. I'm terribly excited to serve you. Specifically, my job is to advise you, any other boards affiliated with you, our daily operations, agreements, any kind of employee issues, statutory and regulatory compliance, that sort of thing. I also handle anytime a case is filed against the department or against the commission. And I just wanted to take a brief moment to let you know that in my experience thus far with the department and the commission, and also it aligns very well with my own perspective, and that is in this time and age, people seem to use or want to use the legal system as a threat or to, in a way, weaponize the use of courts and that sort of thing. What I've learned from the department and truly respect about Game and Fish, especially in Wyoming, is that the first step tends to be, or the ideal and what we strive for, is a positive outcome. The Game and Fish Department and you as a commission are not quick to take people to court. We do not threaten legal matters. Frankly, it's the initial step is always a positive outcome, to build strong relationships with shareholders, landowners, and when people have a complaint, I have found that it really is the first effort to try to resolve issues outside of court. I also, and a little bit jokingly, say, call me. I am truly here to serve you, each of you, as commissioners. If you can't sleep at night and there's a legal issue, or over a legal issue, or over something you've seen in the newspaper, social media, please call me. It helps for me to know the issues that you are concerned with. It helps me to know the players of an issue. And also, my entire job is to help you do your job. So if you are concerned at any time over any issue, please call me. If I do not know the answer, I work with incredibly talented and skilled attorneys who do. We will find the experts and we will help you in your position as a commissioner. So please remember that. Under Title 23, and to just start getting into what your responsibilities and duties are as commissioners, all wildlife in Wyoming by law is the property of the state. And in your role as commissioners, again, I'm here the second one to tell you this, it really is to provide adequate and a flexible system for the control, propagation, management, protection, and regulation of all wildlife. Now, there is a little bit of an exception to this when a organism is listed under the Endangered Species Act. They do become a bit more of under the control of the federal system. And then that way we do work with those. For example, would be grizzly bears, and that's those type of organisms. Commission membership, as you all are well aware, you are appointed by the governor and you're confirmed by the Senate. There are 7 members to the commission. The 8th, actually by law, is our governor, just as an ex officio of his office, and that you all serve 6-year terms. It is up to the governor. The governor handles any type of removal of a commissioner should that be needed for grounds of malfeasance or misconduct. Your responsibilities. Now, what I've done in this PowerPoint is this really is a broad summary of responsibilities, duties, that sort of thing, because there are so many statutes, regulations, and policies of which you need to become familiar with. In my presentation today, I've made kind of larger categories, which over time you will delve more deeply into. But this is to give you an idea of those expectations of responsibilities and duties as we go through this. So my first one would be to direct and implement statewide wildlife policies. You are charged with the responsibility to staying informed and to always maintain objectivity. Now that is difficult. Everyone here, all of you commissioners, you are here because you care about the wildlife issues and the natural resources of our state. You are also here because obviously you have a strong interest in assisting our citizens and our constituents. And so in that, there will be times where you will have to check yourself just a little bit to make sure that you are staying objective. Because, and from what I've learned from speaking with each of you is, your first response is to help the citizens and to help an issue. And what you'll be learning is there are so many aspects to a legal issue, so many facts to take in, that your role being objective at times I'm sure may be challenged. I'm sure you're all equipped to maintain your objectivity. Your other responsibility will include understanding and support department missions, legal mandates, and decision, and also to really understand the role of our citizens in your decision-making process. Of course, you hold open meetings, you receive comments from the public, and so part of your responsibility is to truly listen to your constituents, their concerns, their needs, and their objectives. And you also have the responsibility to attend and actively participate in commission meetings. Your meetings are, as you know, across the state, and your attendance is very important. To continue your powers and duties, you also have the power and duty to promulgate regulations to further the legislative intent of statutes, to acquire lands and easements for management or access, establish policies to promote the protection, management, and the propagation of wildlife, and to also approve department budgets. Now, your compensation, I am guessing this is not why you became commissioners, is not because you're completely well bankrolled. Basically, your compensation will be for attending meetings. That would be $75 a day, not to exceed $4,000 within a year. Your lodging, you'll have a per diem, and your mileage will be reimbursed or at the state rate or just paid by the department, which is typically how lodging and that sort of thing is handled. So in effect, this is largely a volunteer position. Commission resources, this is just to add to the list that has already been presented to you. Wyoming statutes. Title 23 really is the bread and butter of the statutes that apply to you, as well as Title 16 for open meetings. Commission regulations, the commission policy manual, department annual reports, the Wyoming State Wildlife Action Plan, department website is very valuable, and of course, the Attorney General's office. Like I've said before, if something comes up, please call me. If I can't answer it, I will definitely find someone that can answer a question. Commission policy. You will receive your policy manual. In that, it will include your commission business, meeting proceedings. It will state that you follow the Roberts Rule of Order and will basically better describe how you make motions, seconds, what is required for voting, that sort of thing. It will also inform you of your general conduct and your responsibilities and authorities. The state of Wyoming personnel rules do apply to employee conduct. You are considered employees who also serve at the pleasure of the governor. And you are considered employees. However, you do not engage in any supervision of state employees or employees of the department. That is the responsibility of our director, Mr. Nesbitt. As a commission, you are the governing body of a state agency. Now, I've made a list of the meetings that you will be involved in or are involved in. Unfortunately, I've only listed 3 and I meant to list 5. So You have your, of course, annual meeting in March when you elect your chair and vice chair. That did not happen this year because of the weather. And so that was completed today. You also have special meetings. Within those special meetings, you have executive sessions, which sometimes can be considered a separate meeting in and of itself. You also may engage in emergency meetings and, of course, the regular scheduled meetings. All meetings must be held in compliance with the American with Disabilities Act and the Wyoming Public Meetings Act. Now, the Wyoming Public Meetings Act, which I also refer to as Open Meetings Rules and Regulations, we will lightly go over those, but as you practice as commissioners and as we have workshops, you'll become more and more familiar with those rules. All meetings, all of your commission meetings, since you are a governing body, are open to the public in public meetings. For those meetings, you must provide proper notice, and we'll go over the notice requirements differ a little bit between the different types of meetings. You must have a quorum present in order to conduct business, in order to take votes. All discussions and actions are recorded in the meeting minutes, and you cannot circumvent the process by conducting business electronically. This becomes a true challenge with today's social media, emails, texting, that sort of thing. The important idea to keep in mind is the transparency of your decision-making process. So therefore, when you are making a decision, when you engage in discussions with different constituents or amongst yourself in coming to a decision, those types of communications are to be transparent and done where the general public can observe them and put in their input, which does become a challenge when you have those times when you just want to talk something out back and forth. But it really is, when you want to make a decision and if you start texting back and forth, those types of conversations are really meant for the public to hear and to be able to put input on. The public needs to be aware of the facts that you base your decision on and basically how you came about that decision. Now, when you're conducting your commission meetings, should you have someone who is willfully disrupting the meeting? There may be a time, and I've, in a past life, been in commission meetings where someone has come, they've done their open public comment, and they have just been unable to control their emotions, or they've been unable to conduct themselves appropriately. When or if something like that happens and there is a willful disruption, there's a couple ways to handle it. You are well within your rights to have that person removed so you can continue conducting public business. The idea on this is that when you are having a meeting, several people, they have taken the time to come speak with you. This is the scheduled time for them to understand the agenda, for them to address specific issues with you. If you have someone who's causing a significant disturbance, you are well within your rights to have them removed. You may also, if that does not seem appropriate, you can also take a recess and continue at a later time once that individual has been able to collect themselves or once that individual has been removed. You can also recess and set your same meeting at a later date and time, but you do have to provide notice of those decisions. Now, for the person who willfully disrupts the meeting, and commissioners, I'm not trying to be pushy, but that could include you. It's any citizen. There is a potential for a criminal misdemeanor charge of $750 as well. Now, public meeting violations, I've just included this as a slide to cover kind of misconduct. For a public meeting violation, I just put a couple examples here, but it could be if you act without a quorum, you make a decision or a vote without quorum. If you convene a meeting without proper notice to the public, because again, it is the public who inputs into your decision making. Also, another example is if you discuss or cover a topic in an executive session, and I'll go over specifically the list of executive session topics, but if you cover something outside of those topics that are not protected by law to be discussed in executive session, what it does is it blocks the citizens and constituents' opportunity for input and also for their opportunity to be a part of the decision-making process. Now, you also may call an emergency meeting if there is an issue of which it would require a commission vote or of which you should be sharing with the public before your decision is made on how to address that emergency. I think the most classic example for natural resources would be if there was a giant wildfire and additional funds needed to be moved, or you needed to respond in a certain way that wasn't already a established procedure. You can call an emergency meeting. What you do is you would make your decision, and then within 48 hours of that, you would call a meeting for the public's input. Now, if such an emergency, I was in Georgia for a long time, my best example is hurricanes, something happens, and if that emergency is continuing past the 48-hour period, you can continue with your decision and implement it, but then discuss it at your next, either within 30 days, or if you have a regularly scheduled meeting within that 30-day period, you could bring that up then and discuss it at that time. You may also find that you will have to call special meetings. There may be agreement that needs to be signed, but also needs to be discussed with in front of the public, something like that. Or if there's an issue that you may need at the last minute. A special meeting can only be a specific topic. Also with your meetings overall, you can't discuss anything that's not listed on the agenda, because if it's not on the agenda, the public doesn't know that that's what you plan to talk about, and then the public can't be prepared to be a part of your decision-making process. So if you have to call a special meeting, you do have to give notice to the public within 8 hours prior to that meeting. You have to give it to each commission member. Also, any news source that requests notice, it has to specify the time, place, and where business is to be transacted. And like any other commission meeting, you can't discuss anything that's not on the agenda. So for special meetings, typically only called for about 1 or 2 issues, and that's all that you would discuss at that time. Now for executive sessions, for those of you that are new commissioners, you had your first one today. Executive sessions can only be held on a motion duly seconded and carried by the majority vote, which you experienced today. They are closed to the public, and they are closed to the public because they are a time to discuss what is legally recognized as confidential information. That is a time for me to discuss with you any pending litigation. It is also a time to talk about employee issues, and it can also be involved with selection of property or disposition of property and that sort of thing. But as you can see, there are very few things that can be discussed in executive session. Now, the Public Records Act, and are you guys doing okay? I know I'm kind of blazing through this. So, the Public Records Act, we receive a lot of public records requests. Since Game and Fish Department is a public agency, and as you as their board, you and sometimes your communications will be subject to the Public Records Act. Now, pardon me, the Public Records Act covers basically a citizen or constituent may request any information that was in a physical form created, accepted, or obtained by a state or agency within the normal course of business. And such communication has to be in the furtherance of an official function, transaction of public business. However, there are a number of things that will not be released in a public records request. Anything deemed attorney-client privilege cannot be released. Certain materials also will not be released if they relate to personal identifiable information. Some data, we do not release information, for example, of where bears are denning or where wolves have a den. Also, anything related to employee records is confidential and is not released. And any licensing information related to the legal taking of an animal is not released. There are various, under Title 16, there's a long list of the information that either cannot be released. We also have information that may be released. The process is a citizen or constituent may submit by email or letter requesting a certain type or certain topic amount of information. And with that, we review if their request is if they're requesting confidential information, then we may deny it. If any information is denied at all, it is accompanied with a letter explaining, your request was received and it was denied per this statute or per this regulation. We always have to justify when we do not provide information that is requested. Now, the constituents, if we do not provide the information that is requested, they can always appeal that decision to a district court, and then the court decides if such information should be released or not. Oh, and I apologize, I skipped the part where I tell you what your public record information is. It's any document, photograph, map, text, emails, that sort of thing. When we work together at your workshops and training, what we'll do is I put together a series of scenarios of public records requests, also open meeting ones, to work through and become more familiar with this area of law and to help you conduct public business accordingly. And next, I would like to do a brief overview of the rulemaking process. You will follow the Wyoming Administrative Procedures Act. And so I would just like to walk you through the steps of when a new rule is promulgated. It will first begin where the agency drafts the new rule. It will include, if not a new rule, amendments to a regulation. The agency puts together a statement of reasons or statement of principal reasons, depending on who you speak to about this. Basically, that statement justifies the change, either the new rule and explains why it's needed or why an amendment was needed. The agencies have been provided a checklist from the Attorney General's office where they can kind of do the initial check to make sure that there aren't any constitutional issues with the change in the regulation. The agency then prepares a memorandum for the governor to request for the permission to proceed with either promulgating the new rule or the new amendment. However, that particular document is not sent yet. Then that rule, what we call it like a rule packet, is sent to me. I look through the materials and I just check for any constitutional issues or if the new amendment or regulation violates statutes and that sort of thing, and to check and see if the language is clear and concise, easy to understand, and if by the use of a comma, if it's going to change the meaning of that. Then after I approve it, I send it back to the agency, and then they send their initial notice to the governor that they plan to do a rule amendment or start a new rule, and then the governor decides whether to give permission to proceed or not. Okay. The notice of intent to change the new rule is also then sent to the Secretary of State, and it's also published in statewide newspapers, and it's sent in to folks that have signed up for a mailing list with the department, and a copy is also sent to the Legislative Service Office, and I receive a copy as well. What this step serves as, it's notice to the public and to the government entities involved in rulemaking that either a new rule is coming or that there is an amendment to be made. Then the agency publishes a notice of public hearing. A public hearing is held. The comments from constituents and the public are taken over a 45-day period. After that 45-day period, the agency collects the comments and may either provide the individual comments or may summarize what comments were made. The rules may be revised to reflect the public's comments at this time if needed. Then a public meeting is also scheduled. You'll give notice of the proposed rule to be considered, hold the public meeting, and at that time, folks will come in and speak with you as commissioners directly, and that's an opportunity for you to receive the department recommendations, to review and hear live comments from your constituents and citizens, and votes on the proposed rule by you are taken, and at that point in time, should you pass the amendment or pass the new rule, your president, Mr. Doobie, will then execute and sign the certification page. Your final rule packet with all of the previous information put together and a signed certification page then lands on my desk for a final memo that I draft for the governor. That basically, it's the last final check. We don't have constitutional or statutory issues. The new rule or amendment is, ready to be published. And I also certify that all of the APA steps have been followed and completed. Then that rule packet, I submit to the governor's office, where the governor reviews the rule packet and decides whether to sign and decides to sign the certification page. Then once that rule packet is fully and complete, it's sent to the Secretary of State, where it is files the certification page, and the final rule is published. It is updated on the websites. It's updated in manuals, and the final rule then has the full and complete effect and force, of law. I'm now going to another subject, and I apologize for such a broad summary. You have so much to know and such a big responsibility. Again, this is a broad summary of everything. So executive branch ethics, the department director, so our director, Mr. Nesbitt, he investigates ethical violations of department employees, but the governor is who would investigate any ethical concerns or violations of you, the commissioners. It would be the governor's office. Commissioners, you are considered public employees. With that, you are charged with the responsibility of upholding state and federal constitutions, following state and federal law, state policies and objectives, to cooperate with other public employees to protect and conserve state property. You are under the ethical obligation to be honest and fair in performing your duties, to continue. I say continue because I know what it's like to work with you. You are under the obligation to continue honorable, courteous, and dedicated interactions with your fellow public employees and your constituents, as well as in advancing the public good. You are also expected to avoid conflicts of interest. Prohibited activities, no commissioner or public employee shall, I just put in the big legal language of shall, use their public office or position for any type of private gain. That means you cannot use public time, personnel, facilities, or equipment for your own personal use. You have to decide, you can't decide or vote on a matter where you have a conflict of interest. In other words, if you have a personal interest where you would have a private gain to the way that you are voted, and you're supposed to always maintain an appearance of impropriety. When you're considering whether to vote or not, my recommendation is to consider objectively how it would be viewed in the newspaper. If it was printed that you are affiliated with a certain organization, or you own a certain piece of property, or you have a business, or your brother or daughter has a business, if that were to come out in the paper, could the public say that you were capable of objectively voting on the issue? So when it comes to determining if you have a conflict of interest or if you should vote, always consider what it would look like in the paper if the facts were printed. And take that type of reflection when you ever are concerned whether you have a conflict of interest or not in voting or in any other action, really. You are prohibited in participating in activities that conflict with your employment or appointment, that would be an abuse of your authority, or you can engage in outside employment, but it can't be anything that would either inhibit you from being able to maintain your responsibilities as commissioners, or that would really be in conflict with your roles and decision-making as commissioners. As public employees and as commissioners, you are allowed to solicit or accept voluntary gifts. They have to be of a nominal value. Now, you can accept personal gifts of a personal nature from your friends and family, and you can also engage in unsolicited advertising and promotional materials and that sort of thing, and you may receive those. Now, you can also, if you would like, you can teach, you can lecture, you can write for compensation, you can do all of those things, but in your teaching and your educational and communication activities, it can't, the subject material or the position you take cannot be in conflict with your position or with decisions made by the commission. You can solicit charitable organizations as a private citizen, but not within your role as a commissioner. I apologize. This is a repeat slide, or I just clicked the clicker wrong. Nope, clicked the clicker wrong. Okay. To continue on ethics, the main thing is just ask first. If you are concerned you have a conflict, if you're concerned something might look like an impropriety of your position, please give me a call. I will look into it. I will get an answer for you. And if you receive a gift and it wasn't from family, it wasn't from friends, it wasn't meant as a personal gift. If someone bestowed upon you something of greater than nominal value due to your position as a commissioner, first off, you can always return that within 30 days, no problem. But also, if anything comes up, just ask first. You're never penalized before you take an action. If you have a question about it, please give me a call so I can help you through it. Any kind of ethical violations, they may result in disciplinary action per the terms of the Wyoming personnel rules. You could face possible removal so ethical violations can have a maximum of $1,000 fine and be considered a misdemeanor. Before something becomes a misdemeanor, it would have to be considered a criminal action. Once something becomes a criminal action, what would typically happen is, as you're considered employees, you would either be removed or you would be handled on the personnel level. Once an issue an action has reached the point that criminal charges could be brought and it could be considered a misdemeanor, at that point in time, just so you're aware of, you would be advised to have separate legal counsel, because at that point in time, you're handling a misdemeanor of yourself as a person, even though it's related to your commission work, if that makes sense. So please consider your ethical obligations when you're making decisions or when you're conducting your activity as commissioners. Ex parte communications are another consideration. Again, your decision-making process, your transaction of business is public. It should be made public and available to the citizens to observe and be a part of. When you're working to address issues of rules, licensing, answering questions related to any of your citizens' legal rights, anyone's legal duties, privileges, you can't base any of your decision on off-the-record conversations. Again, the whole point, your decision-making process remains transparent. And I'm sorry, I do talk, and I think I'm running a little behind. If such communications do occur, that's okay. We do have a stopgap. If such communication does occur, please write it down, draft a written document, setting forth the contents and the circumstances of that conversation, provide copies to your fellow commissioners, which would be pulling them into that conversation, although after it happened, immediately pull them back into it, I apologize, not back, but into it. And forward the document for inclusion in the administrative record. So again, the constituents can be a part of the decision-making process and can then be pulled into that conversation. Please call me if this happens. We'll get through the process. And I apologize. I've been enjoying speaking with you today, but I didn't realize I was on my last slide. The bottom line is I look forward to working with all of you. It's been a pleasure thus far. If you have questions, please call me. I'm at your disposal at all times. And thank you for this opportunity to be before you today. Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Jenny. Anybody have any questions at this time? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Edwards.
All right. We're going to talk about one of the most exciting things you'll ever deal with as a game and fish commissioner, damage, as the tenured commissioners laugh. Yeah, it's fun and exciting, trust me. What I'm going to do here today is, well, first of all, Commissioner President, Commissioners Director Nesbitt, Scott Edberg, Deputy Chief of Wildlife, and I'm actually responsible for the damage program for the department. I review every damage claim investigation report and every damage claim affidavit submitted by the department and from a landowner, agricultural producer, or whatever term you'd like to use. So that's one of my primary jobs and takes up quite a bit of time. But overall, our department, our folks do a fabulous job with that. And as we get into this, I'm sure there'll be some questions that I can provide you some stats on what some of those results are, those damage claims. So I'm just going to go over statutes and regulations today. I'm not going to get into the weeds on how we investigate damage, some of our techniques. Maybe we can do that another day. It's a very complex process, obviously, because at the end of the day, there's money involved, and we want to make sure we do it top notch, as professional as possible. Many times the damage process does allow for tolerance of the species causing damage on the landscape, which then has benefits to obviously hunters, fishermen, and other wildlife viewers. So I got to ask this question yesterday. When did we start paying damage? 1939 is when the first damage statute was passed by the Wyoming legislature. And since that time, it's been amended 15 times. Basically, it's going to be the statute that I'll present to you today. You all, part of the attachment for this agenda item, you were provided with the statute and the regulation. I'll bring those up. I'm not going to read them verbatim. If you've got some questions about what it says now or in the future, obviously reach out to me at any time and we can go over that in detail. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of damage. Okay. Guess there's a bit of delay, but I get used to this. Okay, Wyoming statute 231901 is the damage statute. It's not a very lengthy statute. Most of what the statute does is outlines what we will pay for damage or what we consider for payment for damage, and then the time frame that's required for discovering damage, notifying of its damage, submitting your damage claim, the department responding to that damage claim, and then the appeal and arbitration process. So basically, this is the first part of the damage statute. This is the second part of the damage statute. I'm not going to read it. You guys can read it again. If you have any questions, you can sure get a hold of me. Okay, so I'll get into the weeds a little bit on the statute. So what is the commission and department responsible for damage? We're responsible for big game, trophy game, or game birds. Nothing more, nothing less. That is it. Does everybody know, for the new commissioners, what we define as big game, trophy game, or game bird? Or I can get into that if you want to. Seems like maybe folks are familiar with that. One of the first key components of submitting a damage claim is that the claimant must report that damage within 15 days of discovery. Now, that doesn't mean that the first time that animal causes damage, they have to be out there and find it. It could be a week later. Let's say you go to a haystack on a Saturday. You don't go back to that haystack until the following Sunday or whatever. It might be 8 days later, 5 days later. Then the elk have got into it, even though maybe they started that damage a week ago. If you saw it, when you first find it, you have 15 days to report that. So it doesn't mean you have to find it on the first time it's damaged. It's 15 days from the time that you discover it. That must be reported. And that could be reported to the nearest game warden, supervisor, or Game and Fish Commission member. That's statutory language that you may get a report of damage. If you do, please immediately reach out to either the regional wildlife supervisor, the nearest game warden, or myself to let us know that you have been contacted about damage. Because again, that kicks in our process to get the process going, start investigating it. But you may get contacted, but please pass that on so we can start looking into it. Okay, so what do we pay for? The department shall consider the claims based upon a description of the livestock or bees damaged or killed by a trophy game animal, the damaged land, growing cultivated crops, stored crops, including honey and hives, seed crops, improvements, and extraordinary damage to grass. That's a pretty comprehensive and complete list of what we'll pay for. In addition, we have a very comprehensive definition of livestock. Pretty much it's everything under the sun that you would consider as traditional livestock. So it means horses, mules, asses, rabbits, llamas, cattle, swine, sheep, goats, poultry, or other animals generally used for food or in the production of food or fiber, and guard animals actively engage in the protection of livestock. Bison are not considered livestock unless otherwise designated by the Commission, by the Wyoming Livestock Board and the Commission. Bison are unique in that they have dual status in the state. Some parts of the state, they're livestock. Other parts of the state, they're wildlife. And they could also be livestock where they're also wildlife. So they're kind of depending on where they're at, if they're livestock or not. And then also the Commission, this is the key thing for trophy game, is that the Commission has the authority to establish by rule, methods, factors, and formulas to be used for determining the amount to compensate any landowner, lessee, or agent for livestock damage as a result or missing as a result of or killed by trophy game animals. And I'll get into that a lot more here in a little bit, but basically for every confirmed sheep or calf, we will have a multiplier depending on what killed it, what part of the state killed it. And that compensates for those sheep and calves that may have been killed by a trophy game animal but were never found and confirmed as being damaged. And again, I'll get into that a lot more. So we got the 15 days notification. We're doing our investigation report. Damage has come and gone. Now we're at the next requirement, which means 60 days after the damage has ended, the claimant has to submit a verified and notarized damage claim to the department to start the actual claim payment process. Some of the things that we don't allow, if they don't allow hunting on the property for the species causing damage during authorized hunting seasons, we can deny the claim. And then if we do not pay the claim within 90 days or investigate and make a recommendation within 90 days, the department has to pay that claim in full. So we have a very, very tight time frame in which our people are expected to do an investigation report, send it to me in Casper for my review, and then send back to the claimant. No claimant is ever advised of what the outcome of their damage claim is without being first notified in person. So let's say if you submit a $10,000 damage claim and our investigation report says we're going to pay you $8,000, we personally contact that person and advise them of our recommendation before they get it in a certified letter. So there's always a conversation that says, this is what we're going to recommend, so there's no surprises when they get something in the mail. Okay, this is, we were going to have an appeal tomorrow, but the claimant cannot make it tomorrow, so he has asked that that appeal be forwarded to the July Commission meeting, and it looks like at this time, the July Commission meeting could have 3 or 4 appeals. So you guys will get a good schooling in damage claim appeals in July. So what is an appeal? So like I said, the department does their investigation. We recommend X dollars, but maybe they said, I want, Y dollars. So let's use, they say, I think I have $10,000 worth of damage. The department says, no, we think you have $8,000 worth of damage. They don't accept the department's payment. The law allows them to come to the commission for an appeal. In an appeal, the commission is basically a jury. You hear the facts of the case based on the claimant's thoughts, what he thinks, and then based on the department of what our investigation reveals, and they present that to you, and then the commission then can make a ruling. They have to make that request for an appeal within 30 days after receiving the department's decision. A claimant cannot appeal anything that's against the law. So if they didn't make the 15-day notification or the 60-day notification or submission of a claim or didn't allow hunting, they cannot appeal that. That's not allowed by law. The statute does say that the claimant shall appear at the next scheduled commission meeting after the appeal request. They are, at times, they cannot do that, and they are offered due process. So many times, just due to circumstances of people's lives and jobs, maybe that can't always be met, but we always try to abide by having them come as soon as possible to a commission meeting. A lot of folks like to appeal in person because I think it helps them present their case. Again, you're presented with the department's information, the claimant's information, and then what it comes down to is the commission has the authority to A, approve the department's recommendation, B, modify the department's recommendation or decision, or completely reverse the department's decision. So those are the 3 options that you have, and many times it's been all 3 of those depending on the case, and we appreciate the commission's work on these appeals. And then let's say, so you guys say you offer them, again, the 10,000, we said 8,000, you give them 9,000. They say, I don't like that either. Now they have the chance to go to arbitration. So 90 days after they receive a certified letter from us saying this is what you folks decided in the appeal, is they can go to arbitration. We currently have 1 arbitration still pending. It's been put off for months and months. It's the Peterson claim, which the commission, you remember from Cody, the young man that had yearling cattle killed by grizzly bears and wanted compensation outside of the law. And we went to you folks had the appeal. Now he's going to arbitration. That was scheduled for end of May, and due to some circumstances of arbitration member panel availability, that's been postponed again, so it'll be well over a year before we probably get that one resolved. So arbitration, how does this go? So again, they submit a letter to us. We get a hold of now Jenny, get all our ducks in a row. There's arbitration process outlined in the damage statute and the commission regulation. This kind of goes back to one of the early questions during executive session. Within 15 days, the department and claimant each appoint a disinterested arbiter who was an elector residing in the county where the damage occurred. So they pick an arbiter as was stated. We pick an arbiter, and that has to be within 15 days of us being notified. And then those 2 folks get together, and within 20 days they have to pick a 3rd arbiter. So there's a 3-member panel. We also then present all that information to the Office of Administrative Hearings, which is a branch of state government. They actually conduct the hearing. They have a hearing officer. It's somewhat trial-based, is that you call witnesses, you have to provide a bunch of documentation in advance, and then when we pick a day, the hearing officer kind of runs it, and basically that the arbiters in that case also act as a jury as well. And then after that arbitration hearing is done, usually within that same day, they actually provide their decision. They provide a written decision of what the recommendation is for payment based on the arbitration hearing. And then that copy of their outcome or their decision is then provided to each party. And if they don't like that, we go to district court, which obviously we just completed with Mr. Longwell and his damage claim case that the department did not feel the arbiter's decision was in line with law. And so we filed that with district court, and then it becomes a district court matter. And again, you've got some time requirements to submit that. And again, COVID really kind of slowed this process down, and hopefully we can get these a little more timely action. But I know, like, for arbitration's Office of Administrative Hearings is really swamped with a lot of hearings, and they only have so many hearing officers. That's kind of the legal process, kind of outlined in statute and how we deal with claims. But now we'll get real quick into the actual regulation process of Chapter 28. This is kind of the meat and potatoes of the damage claim process. It provides a lot more details and direction on how we deal with damage. And so Chapter 8 there on the right side is everything that it includes, that we go by. So it's a very comprehensive, complete regulation. As you'll see in a lot of these slides, it refers to, if you look at that third bullet down, it says damage to livestock by trophy game animals or gray wolf in accordance with Wyoming Statute 23-1901 G and H. You'll see that a lot of times throughout this. Basically, what that says is we only pay for gray wolf damage where they're considered trophy game animals. So that's in the wolf trophy game management area, the seasonal wolf trophy game management area, and there's a part of the statute that also says that we will also pay for gray wolf damage on areas that are on private land that is contiguous and adjacent to those two areas. So if you have property that bisects, let's say, the wolf trophy game management area, but on one side it's outside that area and it's more of a predatory zone, we will actually pay for damage in that area if it's private land. So that got added to the statute, I think, 3 or 4 years ago, 4 years ago now. So again, what do we pay for? We pay for bee, honey, and hives, and those get expensive quick. A bear comes in and knocks down a beehive, replacing actual bees, honey, and supers, and everything that goes with beehives. They add up pretty quick. We've been really good lately about being able to fence those with electric fence in areas where we have routine damage by bears, and once those are up, they're a pretty good deterrent. Livestock, we'll get into livestock a lot more here in a little bit. Veterinary costs for trophy game. We only pay for veterinary costs of trophy game. We do not pay veterinary costs, like if an elk gorges a horse, we don't pay for that. We only pay for veterinary costs for trophy game, and we only pay up to the value of the animal. So if you have a $1,500 yearling and your vet bills are $2,000, we're only going to pay up to the $1,500. So it's the value of the animal that was damaged and not above and beyond that. Extraordinary damage to grass, that's primarily on big game, growing cultivated crops. Most of that is big game. However, we are starting to see some grizzly bears take up some cornfields and take up residence in the Bighorn Basin, which provides exciting times when you're combining your corn and you got grizzly bears squirting out, in front of your combine and stuff. And they kind of create a havoc inside a cornfield, running around and sleeping and eating a little bit. Improvements, again, we define that seed crops and stored crops. So seed crops would be like those sunflower, stored crops would be like hay in a stack yard, corn, silage in a silage bin or whatever. So again, pretty comprehensive what we pay damage for. Okay, these are just some key definitions out of Chapter 28. Damage is the first one. Again, pretty much spells out exactly what damage is. I won't read it, but get a chance to read it. But the big part of that is that we do not pay for consequential damages. And that's important because we are starting to see more and more claims for people wanting to pay for consequential damages. I'm going to just read that one because I think it's important. Consequential damages means damage loss or injury that does not flow directly and immediately from the act of a big game animal, trophy game animal, or game bird, or gray wolf, in accordance with Wyoming Statute 23-901 G&H, but only from the source of the consequences or result of such act. Consequences, damages include, but are not necessarily limited to, future or anticipated production, except as otherwise provided in this regulation for the young of the year livestock, sentimental value, and labor or equipment costs to remove damaged property. So that doesn't mean, what that means, especially on livestock, is if a cow gets killed, we will pay for the value of that cow for that 1 year. But if that cow, you say, would have 10 more calves over its life, we're not going to pay for those 10 additional calves over the rest of its life. It's what happens right then and there. So the only difference is young of the year, if a calf is killed in May or June, we will pay for what the market price would have been that fall when you go to sell that cattle, because that's the right thing to do. I mean, the intent was you would sell that cattle, that calf at the end of the year, and so we will pay you for that market value of what you sold all your calves for or yearlings. You don't pay for car wrecks. So if you hit a deer, that's not covered under damage. We don't pay for a grizzly bear breaking into your house, breaking a window or chewing up your cabin or whatever. We don't pay for those. But we do pay for improvements, and a lot of that has to do with big game, and one of the ones we see more often is elk and irrigation systems, especially a side roll pivot where they get into a field, get spooked, take out a section of side roll or fence. Those are kind of our two big improvement payments. But it has to be agricultural based, and it has to be used to increase livestock production or crop production. So there's certain things that wouldn't be considered improvement. So again, those are kind of some of the highlights. When you get a chance, read those. And if you'd like to discuss it more, I sure be willing to get with any of you. Okay, so we kind of hit damage claim filing requirements. Again, this is the reg. You got to fill out the form. It's a simple 2-page form. You got to have it all filled out. You got to have it notarized. Basically, the individual makes the decision whether they're going to file a claim or not. We don't tell them yes or no. We can't prevent you from filing a damage claim. You can file a damage claim on anything you'd like, but of course, we're only going to process it in accordance with statute and reg. That's what the law requires. And then, like I said earlier, they have to submit that within 60 days after the damage has ended, and those all come to the Casper office. They have to be a hard copy, and they usually come by regular mail. We don't take them electronically. So I'll get into some of the trophy game damage stuff. Like I said, primarily livestock. We do multipliers for missing livestock, calves and sheep. And again, we pay multipliers just on calves and sheep. We do not pay the multiplier for yearling cattle or adult cattle, but we do pay damages on a one-to-one basis. We look at a pasture versus open range setting, and for those commissioners that have been on for a while, you've heard us use that term. Basically, in a pasture setting, we don't apply the multiplier, and in the open range setting, we do apply a multiplier, and I'll get into that a little bit more here in a minute. Again, what we pay for grizzly bears, black bears, mountain lions, and gray wolves, again, where they're trophy game animals. Veterinary costs, value of the livestock in the year, I hit on that. Bee, honey, and hives, and then land, growing, cultivated crops, stored crops, seed crops, or improvements. A lot of people say, well, how do you pay for stored crops on like trophy game? But again, grizzly bears like oat hay and stuff, and we've paid some claims on that. Okay, this is the open range versus pasture information. And it says in the reg, in geographic areas determined by the department have terrain, these are the key words, terrain, topography, and vegetative characteristics that influence the ability of the claimant and department to find missing calves and sheep, again, missing calves and sheep that are believed to have been damaged as a result of a trophy game animal or gray wolf in accordance with 23-191 G&H. The department shall utilize the methods, factors, and formulas in this subsection to determine the amount to compensate any landowner, lessee, or agent for calves and sheep missing as a result of such damage. So basically, you have the authority to provide those multipliers. I'll get into those. we shall apply those when it's appropriate. And then those areas meeting geographic characteristics in the above are referred to as open range, and those geographic characteristics that don't include the above are referred to as pasture setting. Those are just some common words that we use when we do our damage claims. And then the use of a multiplier cannot exceed the total number of confirmed damaged and missing calves or sheep due to trophy game animals. So if we confirm 5, let's make the math easy. Say we confirm 10 calves are killed by grizzly bears in the open range. The multiplier is 3.5, so you'd be entitled to 35 calves as damaged by grizzly bears, but you're only claiming you have 25 that were damaged or missing due to grizzly bears. We're only going to pay the 25 and not the 35. So you can't be paid more than you're actually claiming that were killed, damaged, or missing due to those animals. Okay, just some real, go through here specific stuff. Lions and lion damage for, again, livestock. In grizzly bear habitat, we'll pay 3.5 multiplier for sheep and calves. If it's not occupied by grizzly bears, it's only a multiplier of 3. Again, yearling cattle are not included in the multiplier. Grizzly bears, obviously in grizzly bear occupied habitat, we pay a multiplier of 3.5 for sheep and calves. Non-occupied grizzly bear areas, once a sheep, it's 3. And then again, yearling cattle are not included in the multiplier, it's 1-on-1. Just go back. What's going on here? Oops. Hold on. Hit that other button and sorry about that. So these are just some of our folks in the field, obviously looking at sheep damage and cattle damage, calf damage up there in the upper left. Sometimes I wish these were, something you could scratch and sniff and get a really good enjoyment of what these guys got to dig into at times. They're going to be pretty vile. Wolves, again, to livestock, confirmed losses of sheep and calves by gray wolves times 7. So we pay the multiplier of 7 for sheep and calves in damaged areas of gray wolves. Again, it's in those 2 areas I talked about. And again, yearling cattle are not included in the multiplier. It's just a 1-on-1, 1-to-1. Okay, actual investigation process. We use the standard of more likely than not. That's our field standard. Is it more likely than not that animal was or was not killed by a trophy game animal or damaged by a game bird or big game animal? You make sure that the claim meets the statutory and regulatory requirements. Is it something that we're actually responsible for? It was the species that by law we have to pay for, or was it something else? We get a lot of that when we investigate growing crops, especially corn, where you've got bird damage, i.e. like starlings, blackbirds or whatever, raccoons, other rodents that get in there, and we have to determine what was the damage caused by them versus what was the damage caused by a big game animal. We justify our calculations, spell out very much in detail. They submit it to me for review. After it's been reviewed at the local level, we offer full, partial, or deny the claim. We let the claimant know what our decision was, but of course we always notify them in person first, so there's no surprises when they get it in the mail. And then what are some of the reasons we deny claims for? Claimant gets this piece of paper, pretty simple. If they accept the department's payment, they fill this out, sign it, saying they accept the payment. There's a statement there that says, yeah, I accept this, and Game and Fish is no longer responsible. You compensated me for what I've asked for. And they send that to Cheyenne, and Tracy, our fiscal specialist, takes care of that, and then we try to get them paid within 45 days upon us receiving that payment voucher. Damage claim payments are all tax-free. They're not taxable income. Under the tax code, they're tax exempt. Here's a damage claim process flow chart. Pretty simple stuff. but actually in the field, it really works well. Our folks, again, do a great job. This maybe look like it's somewhat convoluted, but it basically is from the start all the way through district court if it ends up going that route. But 95% of our claims are paid in full or partial pay, and those that are partial pay are usually due to some type of misunderstanding or error, usually in the math or the value of livestock. And when we contact the claimant about that, they say, oh yeah, that's my fault, or I can live with that, and then they just accept the payment. Again, that's because of the dedication and hard work of our field folks to make this damage claim process work. So, what have we paid the last 10 years of damage? So across the bottom, we have the amount claimed in the first row at the very bottom. You see claims have ranged from 208 in FY13 to a low of 129 in FY15. And then the payments have ranged from 685,000 and some change to 1.4 million. That number is, the amount we actually pay is increasing, as you can see, annually, and there's many reasons for that. Claim numbers go up and down. It's amazing. You know, we go from 206 to 148 to 208 to 156 to 129, 150, 178, 139, 153, and 162. There's a whole lot of factors that play into that. Tolerance of the species, environmental conditions, value of corn or other crops, value of livestock, and so it's really fluctuates on the number of claims we get. Commissioners, as the tenured commissioners know, you will get a copy of every claim that happens within your commissioner district. We have been sending those by email. If that doesn't work, let me know and we can send you hard copies. You'll get the initial claim, and then you'll get everything that's related to that claim all the way up until it is finalized and the payment has been sent and accepted. So it may be, depending on appeal, arbitration, district court, some of these could go on for over, a year and a half. So they keep coming, they keep coming. Who pays for these damage? So application fees, $5 for residents, $15 for non-residents, basically pay for the damage claims. When that statute was passed, we weren't paying damage much over 300, 400, 500,000, and so the statute says $500,000 will be maintained at a balance to pay for damage. As you saw, that has doubled and almost tripled over the last several years. So we pay for the rest of the damage out of just day-to-day maintenance and operation money. So again, sportsmen's dollars end up paying for damage. And then Wyoming has one of the most comprehensive damage compensation programs in the world. The top species for damage are grizzly bears in livestock, gray wolves in livestock, elk in growing crops, primarily alfalfa and some corn, and then deer, both white-tailed deer and mule deer in growing crops are the top four, and then the rest of the big game species and game birds make up the rest. But those are the top four that we pay damage on. And that's what we call Scary Man. He's one of our inflatable damage mitigation tools we use, and it blows up and he wiggles around. You've seen them at stores and stuff, and they can be pretty good deterrents for keeping big game out of some growing crops and stuff. But you got to run out there and get it going, or work with the landowner to get it going and stuff. But it's one of our many tools in our toolbox to deal with damage. So it's kind of a quick and overview of the statutes and regs with damage. I've been doing it for 10 years. I think I got a pretty good handle on it, but it seems like these claims are getting more and more complex and, for a better word, contentious with certain individuals. But again, 95% of these are handled without any incident at all. And again, that's out to the relationships we have with our landowners, their tolerance and acceptance of wildlife species on their property, and then the efforts of our field folks to make this damage program work. It wouldn't be successful without that relationship.
Thank you, Scott. Any questions for Scott?
I got one
comment.
Mr. President.
Commissioner Roberts?
Only request is, like on the grizzly bear, do the federal government help pay for those damages?
Commissioner President Dubie, Commissioner Roberts, they do not. That all comes from sportsmen's dollars, license sales dollars.
Yeah, it's just,
That is a question we get a lot, and I probably should mention that. I'll make a note for next time. But Brian, Director, you sound like you may have something.
Yeah, I just want. Okay, I'm gonna take that off and see if that does any better. So I wondered about maybe just a rough estimate of about how many appeals the commission has to see on an annual basis.
So, Director, Commissioner President Dubie, Director Nesvik. So I'll start. When I started this 10 years ago, we had maybe 1, 2 a year, if that. Over my tenure, that's starting to increase to 3 to 4 to 5, 6 a year. So I know at July we have 3 confirmed, and we're expecting a 4th. And so that'll just be one meeting. One of them will be the one that's carried over from this meeting. And a lot of those, I can't give you a lot of detail because then that may taint you on listening to the appeal, but we're seeing an increase in appeals. I'll just leave it at that. And I guess I'd ask any of the commissioners that have tenured commissioners, I mean, do you have any thoughts on damage, or through your experience, did I miss something that I should have, you guys have dealt with appeals and stuff, and got any thoughts on something I should expound on even more?
No, I don't think so.
The one thing, Scott, and
Fine.
I may have missed it, but did you talk about the annual report that?
Oh, yeah, thank you, Director. So we, Commissioner President Dubie, Director, so every year we submit, we develop a damage report. The last one is 2019 because we have appeals, arbitrations and appeals still pending from FY20. And so that report is still pending, but we can get you that 19 report if you want it, and it gives you a good summary of by species, region, of what damage is occurring, what type of damage is occurring, and it's an electronic format, so we can send you that electronically. It's a really very comprehensive but easy to read damage report. And as soon as we get these FY20 claims finalized, once we know exactly what we'll pay or didn't pay, we'll get that finalized and sent out. So we do not put that on the website. We just kind of keep it, internal. But also, if you have any questions and if you can't get a hold of me, Kendra Brown, my right-hand person that helps me with damage, is a great damage reference as well. She's the one who actually starts looking at these claims before they come to me, and everything is mailed to her, and she's the one that sends out all the letters. So that's who you'll get emails from, will be from Kendra Brown when you get damage claim information or other damage information. So I'd be lost without her, I can tell you that.
Thanks, Scott.
And on the report, just one more quick thing. So for the report, the one thing that's really valuable for a lot of commissioners is to, you can get an idea of how many claims were submitted, how many were paid in full, which is the overwhelming majority, and then how many end up being either denied or appealed.
Yeah, if you look at that one slide, you'll see, where I had I'll just go to it. No, I won't. It'll show claimed and then paid, and a lot of the difference between claim and paid on some of those bigger amounts is because people were claiming damages that the commission or the department was not liable for, but they were claiming for it anyways. Unlawful use of multipliers, consequential damages, or other items that by law we're just not responsible to pay. And that's why, but we can't prevent anybody from submitting that claim. We just have to, when we do our investigation report, we abide by the statute and reg when we make our recommendation.
Any more questions for Scott or Jenny or Angie or John? All right, let's take a break. Back at 4:50.
I got a few of them.
All right, Angie.
Well, let me put my.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me? Is it on? Can
Test.
You may not be on yet. We're good now.
you hear me now? Yep, there we go. President Dubie, Commissioners, Director Nesvik. I'm going to take a few minutes today giving you an update about the legislative session 2021. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the session and then spend a little time on those enrolled acts, those bills that went through that have more of a significant impact to the department. And then just briefly talk about the interim session that starts here shortly and what some possible topics that we'll see in the future. So first of all, I think some of you might remember that last year I came to you with the thought that it was a record year. For my first year, it was a pretty heavy workload to be a record. This year was quite a bit lighter for the department, with a lot of emphasis on budget issues and COVID issues. Our workload was fairly light comparative. So there were a total of 441 bills. And out of those, we watched really closely about 56 of them. Out of that 56, we tracked and possibly testified on 16. And then out of those 16, 7 of those were enrolled and moved to implementation. And I'm going to touch on those in a minute. With this session, it was, as you can imagine, very different too. It started out being almost entirely virtual and ended up being almost entirely in person. So we kind of the theme throughout the session was just be flexible, and we'll figure it out as we go. We provided numerous testimony throughout the session. With the primary role, the director represented us on testifying on many bills, as well as several of the bureau chiefs. Most of our testimony this year was in the Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources Committee, often referred to as TRW. Last year, I think we testified in over 7 different ones, but this year, again, we were more concentrated. So to walk through, I'm going to first talk about what we call the roadkill bill. This was House Bill 95, Enrolled Act 58. And what this bill allows is it allows someone to possess wildlife that was killed as a result of an unintentional vehicle collision. So some of the perimeters laid out in the Enrolled Act are you must take the entire animal if you want to possess it. It does not apply to bighorn sheep, wolves in the trophy game area, grizzly bears, mountain goats, or those under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act or T&E species. And there is ability in the bill too for the Transportation Committee to exempt certain segments of highways. And really their ask when they testified was they were concerned some safety issues primarily on the interstates. So look for that as we move forward. So you will hear more about this implementation of this act. The Wildlife Division is currently starting a process where we're going to work very closely with the Department of Transportation in first coming up with a process to implement it, possibly an electronic form for someone who wants to take one of these animals alongside the road, looking at enforcement issues, and then coming to you back for some rules, probably later this fall in November to fully implement this. The next bill I would like to talk about is the Elk Feed Ground One. This was House Bill 101, Enrolled Act 52. This is for the closure of an elk feed ground only by order of the governor. It requires a recommendation from you guys, from the commission. It requires the comment by Wildlife Livestock Board and at least one public meeting. It does recognize that the commission has the authority to contract or lease private lands or state lands for the possible relocation of a feed ground in the future. And then it talks about if one of the federal land management agencies where these feed grounds occur, if the feds give us notice of a closure, we would provide to TRW, that Joint Legislative Committee, a plan of action. What's our contingency plan? What would it cost? Are there alternate sites that we would look at for these feed grounds? This one's implementation really depends on any future action. So implementing at this point is pretty stagnant. Next bill I'd like to mention is called Pioneer Trapping License. This was House Bill 112, Enrolled Act 51. And it's very similar to the other Pioneer license opportunities that we currently provide. Here it offers a complimentary license to a resident who is 65 years old or older and at least has resided in Wyoming for 30 years, specifically related to trapping, as the title says. You may see this one in the future. We're looking at Section 14 that we may need to do a rule change here to fully implement this one as well. The next one is big game trophy game. House Bill 115, Enrolled Act 48. And this one allows for a 11-year-old to take a big game or a trophy game animal at the age of 11 if they turn 12 by the end of the calendar year. So for those, really the thought behind this is that I heard a lot of testimony about the kids that were in their classroom, hearing their friends talk about hunting that fall, and they were limited because they didn't turn 12 till after the hunting season. We will be bringing this one back to you again to modify Chapter 44 to implement it fully. And the last one, but probably the one, to be honest, I'm most excited about, is called Hunting and Fishing Access. House Bill 122, Enrolled Act 46. Starting July 1, it adds $9 to conservation stamp. And where this money is designated to go, we will create a separate account for 85% of the funds, which tallies around that 1.3 million a year that will bring in additional funds for hunting and fishing access, for either access agreements or other type of agreements to provide areas to the to provide access to either private, federal, or state lands that are difficult to access or inaccessible currently. And the second part of that $9, so that other 15%, which will account for about $240,000 a year, goes to one of my favorite things, wildlife crossings. So this is conservation practices associated with our transportation system. Either wildlife crossings like we've been talking about lately with overpasses, underpasses, and associated fencing, but also a lot of the testimony encouraged the use of the funds to also be for this passage, similar to what we talked about the other day, yesterday on the tour, with allowing the fish to be able to move under the highways and roads back to historical ways. So that one we will be implementing as well. Director Nesvik has provided direction to the department to start looking at priorities. What are those lands out there that we've had our eye on for years that we should start forming a plan to implement this act? So with that said, next steps. Again, we'll continue to implement these bills, but the work doesn't stop. It just starts right again. So these interim session topics will start as soon as May. And I'll give you a little thoughts of things that we're starting to hear. Just as we were meeting today, we already got some of those notifications coming out. So we anticipate that most of our work starting in May and then throughout the summer and fall will be again in TRW, but probably also joint ag that we will be providing testimony as well, and possibly a few others. We're yet to see. The Management Council met last week on the 16th to make those decisions, and so we're just starting to hear. We do anticipate more discussion on zebra mussel issue with the moss balls and aquatic invasive species in general. Both of those specifically related to maybe future funding opportunities. It was interesting during this session, they called a joint TRW meeting in the middle of the session to specifically learn more about the zebra mussel moss ball issue. And we anticipate providing additional information moving forward. Some of the other topics that have been recommended to study during this interim, fish hatcheries, wildlife carcasses, the wild horse issue and impacts to wildlife habitat, predator management. And then in addition, we also, the director gives usually a regular update at TRW. And this year, some of those updates will involve the Wildlife Task Force and the feed ground stakeholder process that's continuing. And just to wrap up, I'm standing up here in front of you today, but this is really a team effort by the department. We have an internal legislative team that makes all this happen. And we just, I think me and Brian just couldn't do it without them. So we're really appreciative to them. In addition, I'd like to mention that starting 2 years ago, we had a commission legislative subcommittee. This involved Commissioner Brokaw, Commissioner Ladwick, and Commissioner Crank. And I would like us to consider in the future, as you learn more about the role of this subcommittee, to consider refilling Commissioner Crank's position on that subcommittee. So with that, I'll just stand for questions.
Thanks, Angie. Any questions? Comments? Director Nesbitt?
If there's anything from the commissioners, I'll wait on them, but I do have some additional information.
Okay.
Just so the commission's aware, one of the things that I've began to discuss with legislators even before this past session, and I intend to continue to discuss during the interim, is what I'm calling an AIS insurance policy. So, you know, as the Fish Division put together their rapid response plans, one of the things they quickly identified is the cost to implement one of those response plans if we had zebra or quagga mussel show up in one of our bodies of water is extreme. And the impacts are not just to wildlife and to recreational watercraft users. The impacts are to really everybody that has any association with water, which is everybody in the state. So I feel strongly that this is a state solution. There needs to be state funds that are provided, not necessarily directly to the department, but are held in some kind of an account where if we have to implement a rapid response plan, the governor would have some discretion to be able to release funds to pay for that response. Again, I don't feel like, you know, that should be completely incumbent upon the commission's budget and sportsmen to pay for that. The reception to this point, my discussions individually with legislators has been positive. So we'll continue to have that discussion. The other thing I wanted to quickly mention is, you know, as we prepare this regulation for the implementation of the roadkill bill, one of my biggest concerns is there's probably two. One is that you know, this is an additional workload on department employees that don't have a whole lot of extra time right now to be implementing the administrative requirements that'll be associated. In fact, I would say they don't have any discretionary time to be doing that. So we're going to be looking at ways that we can make that as absolutely efficient as we possibly can, so that we don't have to have field personnel responding every single time somebody wants to pick up an animal on the side of the road. We're going to find ways to do that using technology. The second concern I have is certainly a legal one, and that is with folks, you know, the very, very small proportion of folks in the state that would choose to try to use this roadkill statute to launder illegally taken wildlife. And so from a law enforcement perspective, we'll be looking at that as well when we draft this regulation. The other bill I wanted to quickly talk about was the feed ground bill. You know, there was certainly some concern from a lot of our game and fish supporters, a lot of our stakeholders that were concerned about authority and removing authority from the commission by enacting this statute. And, you know, really when you look at it practically, and if the department were ever to recommend the closure of a feed ground, there's a lot of folks that would be involved. And certainly, as contentious as it is, the governor would definitely be one of those. You are all appointed by the governor. I work for him, and we would never move forward with a major policy decision like that without getting the governor's buy-in and his approval at the end of the day. And the other thing it requires is the livestock board to provide an opinion. That's in the statute, you know, and after many years dealing with the livestock board, I don't think whether it's in statute or not, we're going to have any problems getting an opinion to the governor on the closure of a feed ground or any major change with feed ground. So I just wanted to bring that up. I know that was there was some media on that, and certainly some concern, and I respect those concerns from folks that brought them forward. We worked closely with the sponsor to try to address, the bill's significantly different than the way it started because the sponsor was willing to work with me and other members of the department to address our concerns in the bill.
Any additional comments? Thanks, Angie. Mr. McBarnes.
Cue PowerPoint, please. Here we go. President Doobie, Director Nesbitt, members of the commission, I really feel honored that I got to start my day with y'all and I'm going to get to end the day with you. So it's really a pleasure to be here. My name is Chris McBarnes, and I am the president of the Wildlife Fund. Today, on the next slide, yes, ma'am. My bad, Megan. I'm a millennial. I'm supposed to know how to work technology. Okay, so today we're going to give an overview of the Wildlife Fund. President Doobie mentioned this to me, and I think it's a great idea. Congratulations, Commissioner Jolovich and Commissioner Lundvall, on your appointments. We're so pleased to be able to work with you, and we stand behind you 100%. So I want to give you all a quick rundown of what the Wildlife Fund is. I want to talk to you about the Absaroka Fence Initiative, something that the Wildlife Fund is smack dab in the middle of, and we're very proud of that. I'll give you a fundraising and grants update, so you can see what we've been up to in these past couple months. Kind of bring up some new things when it comes to wildlife tourism for tomorrow. We have some exciting announcements to make tonight from my friend Taylor for the public to find out as well, so we'll briefly touch on that and then end with a little cherry on top called Kids Corner. So what and who is the Wildlife Fund? What are we here to do? Our mission statement is uniting people to advance Wyoming wildlife habitat, research, and education. In May of 2019, we were granted 501c3 status under the Internal Revenue Code, which means donors get the full benefit of tax deductions when they make a gift to the Wildlife Fund, which is always nice. A group of very insightful leaders got together, scoured the state of Wyoming, and they tried to solve a problem, and the problem was this. When partners would approach Game and Fish from the private sector and wanted to contribute to successful projects, due to the bureaucracy of government, there was no good way of getting those funds to the ground. So the Wildlife Fund was born. We are a projects-based organization. We're not going to get in the middle of policy. We want to find projects that make sense for all lovers of wildlife and then go out and bring new partners to the table to help complete these projects. Now, when I'm sitting down with a prospective donor, I get this question a lot. Why in the world would I give money to Game and Fish, Chris? They got money coming out their ears. They got money in the bank. And my answer is this. The Wildlife Fund, we do not raise money for Game and Fish. Rather, we raise money for projects that align with Game and Fish's mission and that you all support. And there's a big difference there, and we want folks to understand that. So we specialize in grant agreements with the department. I'll give you an example. Tony Mong out of Cody, great individual, great employee for you guys, called me and said, Chris, I have a donor that wants to give $3,000 to conduct an aerial survey of the Absaroka sheep herd. But I don't know what to do with the money. I have nowhere to take it. I said, Tony, no problem. I got in touch with that donor, brought the money in, gave them the full tax deduction benefit, then conducted a grant agreement with the department and flowed that money efficiently to where it needed to go so we could carry out that aerial survey. That's just one example, folks. And I've scoured the state, and as I talk to the employees, it becomes more and more apparent by the day that a model like the Wildlife Fund is needed. We have a place, and so it's so important that we get this right. And other states do this, but we're going to be the best. We're just going to be the best, and we're not going to stop until we are. We have a diverse board that's located across the state. 5 members, and for the new commissioners to know, in our bylaws it states that we will always at least have 1 commissioner on our board along with the director as an ex officio member. This is important so that the Wildlife Fund in the future doesn't stray from the mission and vision of the Wyoming Game and Fish Department. And right now, our representatives, of course, Director Nesvik, President Doobie, amazing. Love working with them. We have a great time. We also have a couple board members in the room. Bruce Shackelford from Cody. Bruce, thanks for all you do. And Penny Maldonado here from just outside of Jackson. So we have board members that are all in. And last but not least, and I'll restate it, we want to be a home for all lovers of wildlife. We want to help accomplish common ground. What do we have in common to complete projects that we can all get behind for the wildlife that we love? So we're seeking to find that commonality in building bridges. And I hope you saw that through the tour this morning. You know, we were able to bring together diverse leaders from different jurisdictions that all want the same thing, but have different authorities, and we came together as one in a tour. And I thought that really spoke to the mission of the Wildlife Fund in regards to uniting folks. So that's what we are and who we are, and I'm happy to answer any other questions on that. Here's another reason why the Wildlife Fund is so important, the Absaroka Finch Initiative. We have several amazing NGO partners, the Muley Fanatic Foundation, the Mule Deer Foundation, the Greater Yellowstone Coalition, the Nature Conservancy, Tony Mong with the department, and they've launched this initiative in Park County that aims to ensure fences are functional for livestock management and wildlife movement across the landscape. They have donors that have been coming to the table that want to participate in retrofitting these fences to be wildlife friendly. This is common sense. This is something we can all get behind that impacts migration corridors, keeps our ungulate population healthy, gets them from A to B, but they had no way to bring that money in. So the Wildlife Fund's able to step in, and we're acting as a fiscal sponsor for this initiative. We're also volunteering for this initiative. I myself was out in the field with guys like Sean Blazak, who are here in the room today, and we completed our first retrofit of 1 mile of fencing just north of Cody. We have our next project coming up, the 4-Bear Fence Tear, the 4-Bear Trailhead, May 1st. And so if you're interested in participating in that, I'd love to get you more information. And here's a photo of us out working in the field on the Lichtendahl property, converting barbed wire fencing into smooth wire fencing. And Sean, thanks for teaching me a lot about replacing fence that day. Learned a lot from you. Fundraising update. So like I said, we're trying to engage new partners with the Wildlife Fund. If we simply seek out the same donors who are already engaging in these great organizations who are doing great work, what are we really accomplishing? So we're trying to find new partners that have not historically invested in Wyoming to bring them to the table so that we can get more done. We have grants that are active right now to help support Director Nesvik's Inspire a Kid program and the I-25 Wildlife Crossing project. To the new commissioners, you might be familiar with this project. It's the second deadliest stretch of road for mule deer in the state of Wyoming between Casey and Buffalo. It can also serve as a model for projects like it across the West, as it's a fencing project that funnels these critters to existing agricultural underpasses. So the infrastructure is already there. You just got to put the fencing in, and it will save a ton of mule deer. And so in 2020, we raised about $268,000, put that money back on the ground. The majority of that was for wildlife crossings like I-25 and Dry Piney, and that generated $184,500 in match. We route most of our funds through the Wyoming Wildlife Natural Resources Trust to give our donors a bang for their buck and double that money to help our wildlife that much more. I'm excited to announce, and my good friend Josh Corsy's in the room today, we're going to partner with Muley Fanatics on a golf outing this July at the Buffalo Golf Course. That's where I am from, and this outing, 100% of the proceeds are going to go to I-25. And I think this is cool for multiple reasons. It's a grassroots fundraising effort. And so, yeah, we love those big checks, those $100,000 checks, but the guy that only can afford $25, his money is just as important. And so we want to tap into those folks. And the Buffalo community, we want to be a part of this project because it's right in our backyard. So it just makes sense to have the outing there. 100% of the proceeds are going to go to I-25. It's going to be a great day. So I'll get you all information on it. We'll have whole sponsorship opportunities. Obviously, you can come over and hack around the golf course with Pete and I, lose a few golf balls. I'm sorry, President Doobie and I, and lose a few golf balls, and we're going to have a fantastic day. And you can make a weekend of it. Buffalo is a great tourism location. And we have a commissioner license raffle ongoing on Rally Up right now. Thanks to Commissioner Ladwig. Thank you, sir. And last but not least, we're selling ads for the first time in the history of the big game regulations, deer, elk, and antelope. And so we have an April 30th deadline for ads. If there are any businesses out there, nonprofit organizations that would like to be involved in this, there's still time to get an ad in the regulations book. We have an MPO set of rates and then a non-MPO set of rates. I will say we do have advertising criteria, and the final call is made by the department on the ad content. So that's something people should be aware of. Also, we're still selling our wildlife art paintings that were painted by Jess Doobie, the daughter of President Doobie. Wonderful portrait of a couple moose about to take each other on, I think. It's about 11 by 14. You can purchase these on the wildlifefund.org. And I just so happen to have about 4 of them in my car this week. So you don't have to pay for shipping. Just hit me up. I'll be happy to take your money and give you one of those paintings. Wildlife Tourism for Tomorrow Commission. I know we talked to you a lot about this today. Engaging private businesses to advance wildlife projects, engaging the tourism sector, new partners. But we have a couple of exciting updates for the public that I want to yield to my friend Taylor Phillips with Jackson Hole Eco Tour Adventures. So Taylor, come on.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Director, President, Commissioners. It's been our pleasure, Chris and I, to get this going. And just today we launched the website. So I encourage everyone, including the public, to check it out, wildlifetourismfortomorrow.org. And we have our first sponsors. We've already received money into this fund that gets directed towards the Wildlife Fund. And we're super excited about the momentum that we're seeing. Getting great positive reactions from the business community here. We have a meeting set up tomorrow with some business leaders in the community, and everything's looking very positive. So thanks for the encouragement, the support, and we'll get back to you here in the next little bit and tell you how it goes.
Great.
Chris, before you roll on there, I think on behalf of the commission and the department, we wanted to thank Chris and Scott from the Greater Yellowstone Coalition, Penelope from the Cougar Fund, you guys from the Wildlife Fund, and Eco Tours for a wonderful tour this morning. Appreciate your guys' conversation. It's a wonderful time, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you for those remarks, and it was our pleasure.
I'm so proud of this guy, Taylor. Way to go. Way to go. And it's no longer an idea. We are actually, we're having checks roll in the door now for this program. So we're putting money back on the ground for all these great projects across the state, and the momentum's just going to continue to grow. So I'd like to end with a video called Kids Corner. This is a series we launched about 4 or 5 months ago, thanks to the inspiration from Director Nesbitt's Inspire a Kid program. We want to raise up the next generation of conservation leaders in Wyoming, and that starts by giving them a voice. So I want to introduce to you Charlie. Charlie is the granddaughter of former Commissioner Pat Crank. So even though Pat's not with us today, his spirit is.
Hi, my name is Charlie. I will be doing another Kids Corner, this time about zebra mussels.
Charlie, what is a zebra mussel?
A zebra mussel is a little animal that has 2 shells that can open and close.
And is it from Wyoming?
No, it is not.
So why are we talking about it?
Because they are very bad for Wyoming's water.
Why would a zebra mussel in Wyoming be bad, Charlie?
Because they are invasive. They can hurt Wyoming's fishes very, very bad.
Oh man, they sound terrible.
Yes, they are. They are being found in Wyoming pet stores right today.
And where are they being found?
On mothballs.
And why is that so scary?
Because zebra mussels can escape and crawl out to water.
So a moss ball. I've never heard of a moss ball. What does a moss ball look like?
It looks like a little green sponge that is made of algae.
And where could someone find a moss ball in their home?
Kids can have them in their fish tanks or even as pets.
So, Charlie, what should a kid do if they have a moss ball?
Get rid of it with a grown-up's help.
And where can grown-ups get help to get rid of the moss ball?
You can look at the Game and Fish department for help and directions.
Should we wrap this up?
Yes. Kids, even if you love your moss ball, we have to keep Wyoming's water safe. Thanks for joining me on Kids Corner. Bye!
Charlie is a superstar. And if you go to YouTube, we've published 3 of these so far. We have other kiddos across Wyoming that are helping us with these projects as well. And it's all going to be a part of our Wildlife in Schools program. So thanks to Charlie. She's a rock star. So in review, we've talked about what and who is the Wildlife Fund, the Absaroka Fence Initiative, fundraising and grants updates, wildlife tourism for tomorrow, and the best is Kids Corner. And so thank you, President Doobie, Director Nesbitt, members of the commission. I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Wonderful, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Or Taylor, or anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks.
Appreciate that. All right, we'll go to the call of the public. First up, we have Lisa Robertson.
Can you hear me okay talking through this mask?
I think so.
Hope so. Okay. It's a first. It's good to see each of you. After listening to Chris give his talk about the amazing work he's doing, it's amazing. In fact, I'm probably or committed to make a donation to a certain project. I know Director Nesbitt will be pleased to hear that. And Wyoming Untrapped is going to do the same. We are very thrilled about what they're doing. And it's exciting. There's sort of an exciting feel in the air when you hear a presentation like that. I love it. You know, that's what we really want to hear. So this morning, I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes when you wake up that early, you feel inspired. So I looked out and I saw a half moon setting over the Tetons, and it just takes your breath away, and you're thankful for where you live, which is right here in this case. So I'm Lisa Robertson, a volunteer and co-founder and president of Wyoming Untrapped. And I woke this morning and wrote these words, a couple pages, which I've already marked off a couple paragraphs. I woke with sort of a fresh vision of life ahead. I've lived in Jackson for 31 years. Some of you know that, and you commissioners don't. And the legislature has just passed a bill that was signed by the governor that defines people like me as a pioneer trapper, which means that anyone 65 years of age living in the state for 30 years can trap for free for the rest of their lives. In other words, wildlife conservation efforts will lose a $45 license fee annually for trapper. I never thought I'd be there. I never thought I'd be one of those. The governor has just appointed 3 of you to serve as unbiased and fair decision makers. We're excited about that as well. I would love to be in your position to represent those tens of thousands of people and wildlife who call this state home but have no voice. I hope each of you will utilize your position to act as a free agent, not controlled by culture, peers, or politics, but employ what is right in a modern day world. I hope you realize part of your growing constituency considers public safety a right to roam free without fear and desires a level of coexistence with our wildlife that honors their freedom to be treated humanely at every level of management. Our organization was formed 7 years ago in Teton County following several pet trapping incidents, which left our neighbors stunned that our best friends could suffer unimaginable injuries and pain, and traps and snares located in our backyards. Worst of all, no one was held accountable. We were several educated and passionate volunteers who believed that compromise would be a rule in finding solutions to these trapping conflicts which continue on our public lands every single day. Since then, and this is a whole new commission, by the way, we've actually outlived the commission of 6 or 7 years. We're still here, we're still standing. We filed a petition or petitions. We've collaborated with local and state game and fish officials. We've met with trappers, local legislators, representatives, and concerned citizens, all in efforts to discuss solutions which were long past due. We reduced our request to the simplest solutions to ensure a reasonable expectation of safety on our public lands by separating trapping from a very limited number of high-use trails. The commission at that time used its power to vote down each of our simple requests. Please don't misunderstand. We are grateful for the small steps taken on our behalf. That we can now remove our pets from the trap or snare legally with the definition of tampering for the trap now excluding pets and livestock, but we still have a lot of work to do. Due to our organization's effort, our local community and statewide communities are now aware that these still hazards exist on our landscapes, directly on public trails. We have provided the tools to release our pets from these still devices. We have provided a trap safety brochure, as well as trap release workshops, which teach safety on our public landscapes. The public is now aware that these traps and snares are managed with trap chip times that desperately need refinement, that traps are unlimited in allowable sizes, and their power for injuries and death continues. They understand that there's no requirement for non-target reporting, which makes it impossible to know how many pets, livestock, and wildlife are being injured and killed annually by trapping. And they realize that you can't effectively manage wildlife without knowing their populations, that we are on our own when we step out onto these very lands which belong to each of us. President Doobie, we applaud your wisdom and the historic moment to initiate a collaborative trapping reform process last January 2020. Following the 2 petitions for workable solutions, we applaud Commissioner Crank and the Commission for taking additional steps for legislative consideration. And we thank Rick King and his team for collaborative efforts to find solutions. We were presented just yesterday with the new department recommended regulations for public comment. In response to our efforts and those of new trap-free partners statewide, a Chapter 4 definition has been added to acknowledge power-activated snares. This is good news. Several WHMAs have been closed to taking of fur-bearer animals in the past, but will now be opened to all trapping with exception of any body snare or quick-kill body trap with a jaw spread exceeding 5 inches during any open pheasant hunting season. This means that all but the smallest dogs might be protected, but the door is now open in these WHMAs to allow the take of fur bearers by other means. A few additional WHMAs have set restrictions on the same size traps or snares during the 3.5 months of October 1st through February 15th. The most progressive step has been to close 2 additional WHMAs to the use of any snare, quick-kill body grip trap, leg hold trap, and live trap during the calendar year. One of those is the Pilot Hill WHMA. This is good news as well. It's now part of a collaborative new project near Laramie, which is being created for safe public recreation. Another progressive step is to restrict all large power-activated snares on public land. Almost all of these rule changes are on commission-owned lands, with jurisdiction given for such changes. These steps acknowledge that change on our public land is critical. So to wrap this up, we strongly stand united before you now. Tourism, Wyoming's #2 industry, is forecasted to bring millions of visitors annually to our public lands in Teton County and across our state. These millions of visitors will seek the benefits of these open spaces, yet they will be exposed to traps and snares directly on our trails and the resulting senseless injuries and deaths. We have yet to be granted trap-free zones, and the deadly Seneca snare, which killed a beloved pet in Fremont County, will still be legal on our public lands, with no accountability by anyone for killing a pet. Countless wildlife and non-target species will be taken without requirements for reporting. We urge you to continue your pursuit of finding solutions for the diverse public land user groups advancing across the state. Thank you very much. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Lisa. We appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Joshua Corsi.
President Doobie, Vice President Byrd, congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
New commissioners, welcome. I'm Josh Corsi with the Muley Fanatic Foundation. Would like to hand you out a packet if that's all right with you.
Sure.
Give you a little information in here. I'd like to give you an update this evening on commissioner license updates in our past efforts, not only from the headquarters based in Green River, but also our chapter efforts around the Cowboy State and the various partners that we have partnered with throughout Wyoming in offering and facilitating the sale of these commissioner licenses. I could get you to turn, it will be on the inside cover. You'll see a 8x14 form that looks like this. This is an update that goes back to 2015, and I thought this was relevant and important to showcase not only the efforts that our organization has had with these commissioner licenses, but also the partnerships that have been an important effort to put dollars on the ground across Wyoming for very valuable research and conservation habitat projects. If you look there at the very far left corner, you see the total gross dollars raised back to 2015 with commissioner licenses. And that's just a little over $1.3 million, which is a significant amount by any stretch. Beyond that, if you turn to page 2, these are licenses that the Muley Fanatic Foundation have sold or that we have marketed to facilitate the sale of that involve very valuable partnerships with other organizations. As you can see there, the Monteith Shop from the Hobbs School is a key partner for us. Beyond that, the Wyoming Migration Initiative, the National Bighorn Sheep Center, the Cowboy Joe Club, and as Chris mentioned earlier, from the Wildlife Fund, we've partnered with them as well. So if you look on that page, that's 22 commissioner licenses back since 2015 that the Muley Fanatic Foundation have helped sell. The one thing that we have been able to do over that duration of time is really maximize the revenue that these licenses are bringing, not only through auctions, but more importantly, through a large stakeholder of audience, through the raffles that we've been able to offer through our website. That has come with a learning curve. There are several third-party vendors out there, Raffle River, Rally Up, etc. But eventually what we have found with those vendors is that they all lead to allowing politics to be involved where anything pro-hunting or pro-gun eventually leaves them out of the loop. So what we have done is we have partnered with a web designer and are now facilitating all of those raffles through our own service at muleyfanatic.org. If you go to page 3, these are the 12 licenses that have actually been allocated to Muley Fanatic Foundation, our headquarters, based again out of Green River. Those 12 licenses, you can see, or excuse me, these are the chapter allocated licenses. If you look to the far left column, you can see which of those chapters. We have 9 chapters in Wyoming, and that indicates the allocation to each of those chapters. And then on the very last page, those are the 13 licenses that have been allocated specifically to the Muley Fanatic Foundation and our headquarters. And those you can see within where those dollars have been raised and then where those dollars have been allocated to. Some of those, as we've been a big proponent of, have been our ask and request of the commission in the allocation of those licenses that they be earmarked specifically to projects or efforts. As you can see, if you take, for example, if you go to kind of the break there in the left-hand column, Hunter Ed and the Wyoming Youth Expo, that particular commissioner license was allocated by President Doobie back in 2019 with the idea that we could purchase 10 firearms for Hunter Ed instructors who had earned that in their efforts, as well as our support of the Youth Expo. So I wanted to give you an update specific to that. There are a couple of forms you'll find behind that one in your packet. One of them is a commissioner's license that is being drawn for tomorrow at 2 o'clock. That is actually a commissioner's license courtesy of Commissioner Brokaw. That is in support of the Monteith shop. There are still a few tickets available. Again, all of the tickets that we now facilitate are done through our website. Beyond that, there is one more that we have yet to allocate this year, and that was from Commissioner Ladwig. And a brief update on that. That one is to benefit our Putting the U in Hunt program. And this year we already have, as you know, we petitioned for those licenses by the end of January. We have 28 youth with life-threatening illnesses scheduled, which is by far the most that we have ever had. Last year was the most that we had ever had in the 6 years of doing that program. We had 18. This year we have 28. So again, very thankful for that opportunity. It certainly is a big boost for us with the lingering effects of the pandemic. We have many of our chapters that hold their event in the spring that are now 2 years removed from having an event. So those costs to those youth, they're 100% covered. There's no hotel, there's no meals, there's no lodging, there's no license, there's no airfare. Those expenses are all covered through this program. So thank you for that, sir. Last but not least, why I'm here, I wanted to take an opportunity to showcase. You'll see you have this flyer in your packet. We just launched this. I communicated with Director Nesbitt and Deputy Director Bruce on this. This is a t-shirt that we are offering up as a raffle. Again, being able to host these through our own website has made a significant difference for us. This is the t-shirt with the 2021 conservation plate on the front, and on the back, kind of the idea behind this project. The power of a waterfall begins with one droplet of water. This particular raffle, when we partnered with the Wildlife Fund on the sale of their commissioner license earlier this year, Chris had offered up $5,000 for us to help boost the sales to that offering so they could sell that out. We took that $5,000 plus $5,000 of our dollars. We bought $10,000 worth of t-shirts, which equated to 1,000 t-shirts at $10 a piece. We are raffling those t-shirts off for $100, which in total, the 1,000 t-shirts times the $100 would generate $100,000. Our plan for that is to turn that over to Mr. McBarnes with the Wildlife Fund so he can leverage and partner and grow those dollars, with all of those dollars being raised for the Casey the Buffalo project, as mentioned. So beyond that, he already mentioned the golf tournament. We're excited about being able to do that in your neck of the woods, President Doobie. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions or comments for Josh? I just personally like to thank the Muley Fanatics for helping our Hunter Ed instructors for obtaining rifles and for their service for the kids and providing hunter education across the state. I appreciate your efforts in that.
Absolutely. Glad to be a partner. Glad to live here in Wyoming.
And everything else. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Jared Backer, is that right? I can't read that, your last name, sorry.
Take a scratch.
Yeah, kind of.
Too much time in front of a computer, really. Can't spell my own name anymore. Good afternoon, Mr. President, fellow commissioners, Director Nesvik. I'm Jared Becker. I'm the Executive Director of the Snake River Fund here in Jackson. The Snake River Fund has worked tirelessly for the last 2 decades to promote public access and stewardship of the upper Snake River headwaters here in western Wyoming. And we've been largely successful because of great partnerships. And so today I'm just here before you to say thank you to you as commissioners, to Assistant Division Chief Dirk Miller, Regional Supervisor Rob Gibson, and Habitat Access Coordinator Derek Lemon. The Game and Fish Department remains a valued partner and a trusted partner of the Snake River Fund. The department continues to provide leadership and financial support to improve public access here in Western Wyoming, and particularly this year at Alpine Landing on the banks of the Snake River and at Palisades Reservoir. Through your approval of sport fish restoration dollars this summer, Alpine Landing will receive a boat ramp. It will receive a new parking area, all benefiting sportsmen and recreationists here in Western Wyoming. These improvements will also support the economies of the town of Alpine and northern Lincoln County particularly. And the improvements will make the site much more functional and a safer user experience for all. So for many years, this public access point has been used and served by many, but claimed by no one. Spurred by your generosity, we've been able to establish a cooperative agreement between the Snake River Fund, the Caribou-Targhee National Forest, the town of Alpine, and Lincoln County Commissioners for future site maintenance and operations. And the dollars that you brought forward through the Wyoming Game and Fish Department are significant and appreciated by many. Your investment will be used by a variety of different user groups for years to come, and we all benefit from your generosity. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any comments, questions? Thank you. Any more blue sheets? Anybody on the phone? All right, we're going to adjourn here, but we're going to resume tomorrow at 8. So the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would move that we adjourn.
Moved by Commissioner Byrd, seconded by Commissioner Roberts to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, see you tomorrow.